Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the town of Waukesha on January 9th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. This is the Joint Plan Commission and Town Board meeting. So we're called to order. If you would all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. We'll proceed with roll call, the Plan Commission first and then the Town Board. Kathy?
Kathy Piala? Here. Mary Sisney? Here. Alan White?
Here.
Scott Fuller?
Here.
Chairman Fisher?
Here.
Supervisor Radke?
Here.
Supervisor German?
Here.
Supervisor Durr?
Here.
Supervisor Stigler?
Here.
We ought to take just one quick minute and welcome Kathy Piala to the Plan Commission. Longtime town resident, known, I'm sure, to many, knows much about the operations of the town of Waukesha. We're delighted to have you on board. Welcome. Item 4, open meeting law and compliance check. The agenda was posted and distributed to all news media requesting notification in accordance with the open meeting laws on and posted on or before Tuesday, January 7th, 2020. Kathy, can you affirm the accuracy of that statement?
That's correct.
Okay, item 5, communications with town residents. We'll talk generally about that maybe, but we have a specific item on there, sub A, which says there will be a public meeting on January 23rd, 2020 at 6:30 to answer questions regarding the incorporation efforts and to discuss the town's future building need. For all town residents who were fortunate enough to receive your tax bills in early December, there was an insert in there that had much that same kind of information in it. I would tell you the intention of that is to have a rather open discussion between the town board, staff, and residents. We'll be disseminating information and we'll be giving people an opportunity to speak to the issues of future town building needs on this property for the fire department, public works department, and the like. I don't know that there are any other communications with town residents. Simply a reminder, Kathy, why don't you do very, very quickly just telling people again how they can use the town's website to get information, find agendas, and how things can be disseminated to them by a email blast if they so choose. Can you just do that very quickly?
So on the front page of our website, townofwaukesha.us, you can, on the right, there is a documents center. Our minutes, our agendas, and our packets are in there, as well as many other documents from the town. You can go in there and sign up for email notifications. It's right at the top of the list, and whenever any document is placed in that folder, you will get an email notification.
Okay, thank you. Item 6 on our agenda is citizen comments. If you would like to offer comments, you're welcome to come up to the microphone in the center of the room there. State your name and address, please, and proceed. All right, seeing no one, we will move on then to the agenda portion for discussion and possible action. Item 7 is discussion and possible action on the site plan / plan of operation request for Todd Novacek, representing New Perspective Senior Living, for a rental office located at S22W22660 Broadway, tax key WAKT 129997001. This is for discussion by the Plan Commission and Town Board, possible action by the Plan Commission, and possible action by the Town Board. I'm going to recuse myself from this matter. You might recall this was on the agenda back in December, and Mr. Novacek was here. At that point in time, we did not have a sufficient number of members of the Plan Commission to act on it. I think at this point in time, and you can do as you choose, but typically the longest-serving member would convene the Plan Commission portion of it and run the meeting, and then the town board part of it, I guess either Supervisor Stigler or Commissioner White, you can carry forward with the meeting from there.
I thought maybe we had arm wrestle for this job, but I guess not. All right, do you want to get a quick review from our planner to kind of refresh our memory as to what's all going on here with this, Sean?
Yeah, certainly. So what the petitioner is requesting is approval of a plan of operation essentially for a rental office for the New Perspective Senior Living Center, which is directly across the intersection of 59-164 and Broadway. They'd be utilizing about 1,360 square feet of the currently vacant southernmost building on the site. What you see in front of you on the overhead is actually rotated sideways, so north is actually to the right. And so the building that they'd be occupying is a portion of the southern one here. They'd like to occupy as soon as possible, all the way through July 31st, 2020, potentially. The property is zone B1 business, which allows professional offices as a permitted use. They are not proposing any changes to the site plan itself. In terms of the actual plan of operation, they'd be occupying suites 2B, 2C, and 2D. Number of employees would be 4 total, no company vehicles. Hours of operation will be Sunday through Saturday, 9 a.m. through 7 p.m., and construction would begin as soon as possible. In terms of parking, office spaces require 1 space per every 300 square feet of floor area. 1,360 square feet requires 5 dedicated stalls. They are noted on the site plan. There's plenty of parking on the site. There's some vacancies, and so a portion of it's used, but there's certainly plenty of parking for this particular use. In terms of signage, no specific signage is proposed, but back in April 2016, there was a master sign permit that was issued for the sign that's adjacent to the entrance driveway that allows the actual copy to be replaced, the inserts to be replaced for signage. So if they choose to put up a sign, they'd be allowed to do so as part of that permit. So if the Plan Commission chooses to recommend approval to the board, I have outlined a series of 12 conditions in my staff report, including the plan of operation.
Has anybody from the Plan Commission got any questions for the planner on this? I think most of us discussed it pretty good last month in depth. Is the petitioner here? Does he have anything to add, or?
I think he was from out of town last time for the meeting, and so he said he may not be able to make this one. That's why he kind of described his application last time.
Okay. Anybody have anything from the Plan Commission? Is there reason to make a motion at this point?
Sean, do you have a proposed motion? Have you read it?
I have not read the motion, but it would be, Town and Plan Commission recommends to the Town of Waukesha Board approval of the site plan of operation amendment request for Todd Novacek, doing business as New Perspective Senior Living and Broad A Corporation for the property located at South 22, West 22, 660 Broadway, Building 2, Suites 2B, 2C, and 2D, Waukesha, Wisconsin, 53186, subject to the following 12 conditions.
I will make that motion. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the site plan of operation for Todd Novacek. Any other discussion? Take a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, now to town board. Is there any discussion from the town board at this point?
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation of the Plan Commission.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to approve site plan of operation for Todd Novacek. Is there any other discussion at this point? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Gracefully turn it back over to our chairman.
Okay, moving on to item number 8. We have the continuation of the public hearing, which was held with the Town of Waukesha Plan Commission and Town Board on Thursday, December 12th, 2019, for the purpose of hearing public comment on the proposed conditional use, planned unit development PUD for petitioner John Crotty, tax keys WAKT 1404996 and WAKT 14999, 4 nines, to construct 10 single-family homes known as Rolling Meadow Townhomes on 34.29 acres. I will declare the resumption of the public hearing open at this time, and we have a procedural matter to go through. Commissioner White was not able to be present at the meeting back on December 12th, so I communicated with him in order for him to participate this evening. He would need to review the public hearing portion from December 12th on the town's YouTube channel. Have you done so?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And same question then would go to Commissioner Piala. You were not present because you're not on the board at that point in time or on the Plan Commission. I suggested to you as well, if you want to participate, you need to do the same review. Did you do that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, then you can both participate. We'll resume the public hearing. Sean, do you have some comments that you want to make as we get going before we open it up to other speakers?
I guess I'd ask you, we did do a pretty comprehensive overview last time of my staff report. Do you want me to recap the entire thing, or do you just going to give me give you a brief overview of what they're proposing?
What's the pleasure? Why don't you kind of hit the middle of that, I guess, if you will. I don't know that you need to dive into all the detail, but
Sure.
why don't you kind of give us some
Sure.
way halfway down the stream? How
Yeah,
about that?
so it's no problem. So the properties on the screen overhead, it's actually these two properties near the southwest corner of Glendale Road and 164. It's 34.29 acres. It's currently zoned A1 agricultural district with some conservancy and environmental corridor and high groundwater overlays. The proposed development is outside of those overlay areas entirely. What they're proposing is they're asking for conditional use approval for a residential plan unit development on the parcels for 10 single-family condominium units. There would be private road access that would come in from Glendale. The proposed homes would include 3 different building types. There's a 2-story model and 2 ranch models. All models are about 2,300 square feet in size. The town's comprehensive plan for the property is commercial. They are requesting to develop the property under the provisions of the existing A1 zoning district, which does allow residential PUD through the conditional use process. They'd be proposing a condominium plat to establish the actual units on the property. Condominium plat is not a division of land, although we do require review of condominium plats through the same process as our subdivision process in the town. They have not submitted a condominium plat at this time, but would do so as a condition of approval of the plan unit development. In terms of the zoning, what they're proposing, the building locations and layout meet the setbacks of the zoning, the use of the zoning. They are asking for a deviation through the PUD to allow the single-family condominium units to be built on smaller unit sites than a typical traditional lot.
Okay, well done. Comments during the public hearing? Petitioner, if you would want to come forward, if you have anything that you would choose to add to that, please do, and then we'll let others speak after you.
Okay, I am John Crotty from Rolling Meadows LLC. And Sean did an excellent job of overviewing of the project. I'm going to drop off. So you should pretty much have all those documents in your packets. It's just submitting them into evidence for this hearing. So basically, it's the decision worksheet, a letter from Foth to Chairman Fisher, letter from Foth to the Planning Commission, stormwater management plan submitted by Lynch and Associates, soil evaluation by Miller Soil Testing, letter from the Waukesha Planning Commission, a letter from Kessler Consulting, and from Ruckert Milky Engineers. So yes, as Sean stated, this project is going to have far less impact than previous proposals for this site. We're only developing 10 dwelling units. I think the other two were 40-ish maybe on the site. They're going to be single-family condominiums, as Sean said, 3 different designs, 2 ranches and a 2-story. They're all going to be very nice, luxury style, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 3-car garages, and around 2,300 square feet. So as far as the land, over 70% of the land is going to remain as open space, and that will be preserved in perpetuity through the condominium bylaws. And the whole project itself is going to be around 600 feet off of 164. So there will be minimal impact to the rural nature of the town of Waukesha here in the southern part. So let's see, the stormwater management plan performed by Lynch and Associates, that was done on 10/18/19. That's submitted to the Waukesha County Parks and Land Use Department, and it was approved by them. Soil testing performed by Miller Soil Testing, dated 11/30/17, also submitted to the county, and that has been approved for conventional septic because the soils tested out very well. They do not have to have mound systems there. That was done by the Waukesha County Parks and Land Use Environmental Health. And, okay. So moving on. My job is to go over the conditions of the conditional use and show that we have met them. So, we all have the decision worksheet in our packets, or?
I think, I'm just make a suggestion here, if you don't mind, and I'll certainly give you an opportunity to do that, but I think it would be appropriate to allow others the opportunity to speak before we get to that point. So I'm going to just ask you respectively for a minute to hold that, okay?
All right, I'll come back up.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else who would like to speak, please come forth.
Sandy Hom, West 230, South 3827 Milky Way Road. Sean, I read your letter dated to Chairman Fisher December 30th, and in the first paragraph at the end you say something about provide a response to question 4. I don't know if that you meant question 4 or objective 4, because following throughout the rest of the letter it references objective 4. And my comment in general about that when I read this letter was that at the December 12th meeting, I thought the chairman had presented a number of questions, none of which were addressed in this letter. And this letter sort of begs the question, which was kind of, I think, what was being driven at, which was, what does the town have as commercial space to meet the objective 4? And all you've said is that it doesn't mean that any particular parcel has to be held. And I think we all agree with that. I think the point was, well, how much do we have? And if we whittle it away to nothing, then are we meeting objective 4? So I don't know if this was intended to answer all of the questions that the chairman had asked, and if there are more questions to be answered, then I don't think it's time to proceed. I think we need to wait for those answers, so thank you very much. That's all I have on this item.
Okay, who else would like to speak? If not, those from the, oh, indeed, I didn't want to cut that too quick. Come forward, please.
Betty Patchett, South 57
Get
West.
real close to that microphone, please.
West 22641 Woodside Court. I too am concerned about the fact that this is a very viable commercial future area. It is now on the new bypass, which will mean much more traffic as traffic goes around and then intersects with that road. I'm thinking that this is maybe a better use somewhere else in a more residential type area rather than this more commercial area. I have no objections to the gentleman. I just think that the town needs to consider that this might be a very valuable commercial area in our future.
Thank you. Who else from the audience would like to speak? Please come forward, close to the microphone. Give us your name and address, if you would, please.
Terry Bork, West 238, South 5370, Chestnut Trail. Subdivision right across from this. About 30 homes. We've been there since 76. I think this would be a fine proposal for that land. I'd like the fact that it's not more than 10. I'd like to see a street light on Glendale 164. That intersection is very difficult at night. And I don't know if you're going to need some landscaping to buffer the highway noise, but that's their concern, not mine. But I'm for this project, and is that a retention pond that we're looking at, the green? Okay, and they're going to have separate wells for each building?
There'll be some shared wells.
Okay. That's all. I think it's doable.
Thank you very much. Someone else from the audience, please. We certainly will come back to you, but then at this point in time, I guess, members of the Plan Commission, the Town Board, if you have questions or comments about the proposal, please proceed.
Okay. A question, not question so much as a comment. This is zoned, or right now we're planning on the whole 164 corridor to be commercial. Town of Waukesha likes its rural atmosphere, and it's important to keep that by keeping commercial separated from rural. But that 164 bypass, that 164 corridor affords a lot of money to the town of Waukesha as the town develops, which will keep our taxes down. And it's important to plan for that, because if, like in the case of Brookfield, you've got Blue Mound Road that's loaded with businesses, but it's all houses away from it. So it was planned that way, so you don't break into it. With this plan, what I see is that once those houses go up, you're blocking a big section of 164 that can no longer be used for commercial. And I agree with one of the residents in that it looks like a very good project, but I think it's in the wrong area.
All right, thank you. Other members of the Plan Commission or the Town Board?
As many know, and some perhaps not, the town has struggled with this piece of property and how to designate it in the land use plan. That's separate from the zoning specifically. As was mentioned, this is currently zoned A1, in which this type of use under certain conditions is allowed. In the land use plan, there has been great discussion about exactly how to designate this, whether it be commercial or commercial specific to office. I won't get in deep to the reasons for that right now, but there was a lot of discussion just recently as we adjusted our land use plan as to how to designate this plan. I don't necessarily disagree that this piece of property should be used as commercial, but it seems to be the majority of the board and the plan commission to leave it commercial office specifically, of which I think essentially kills the property for development. I don't see any potential development in the next several years that would suggest that somebody's going to put an office building on this piece of property. Some might argue that that's the intent, to keep it the way it is, to benefit the surrounding area and those in the surrounding area. I think it would be better used as commercial, but the majority of the board and the plan commission can't seem to make that designation. There was a lot of talk about property rights and property owners and how they want to choose to use their property in the land use process. That doesn't seem to align with this piece of property here, as obviously Mr. Karate, the property owner, wants to do a residential type development on the property, but still the town board maintains that it needs to be a commercial office designation, even though the property across the street, meaning across Glendale, there was talk when we were talking about changing that land use that we should respect the rights of the property owner to keep it A1. So that's just a little bit of history on the property and how it's designated for use and why maybe this is probably the best option, since we can't seem to come to an agreement that it should just be open to commercial.
Okay, thank you. Other members of the Plan Commission or the Town Board?
What has been done in the past to facilitate commercial use of 164? What kind of process has been used to entice business owners to put their buildings up there? Has there been any sort of a marketing program for 164? If there hasn't, then we don't really know what could happen to that, correct?
In answer to your question, and somebody else may have a better sense of vision of that, I don't think the town has engaged in any kind of a formal or even informal marketing effort. Does anybody disagree with that response? Okay.
So taking it one step further then, I mean, my concern is, as a former salesperson traveling 5 different counties, I like the idea that I-43 is right there, and having to get on and off the freeway and putting on as many miles as I did every year for many, many years, I would prefer to see that be a better tax basis for the town of Waukesha. Not that I think this is a poor program, because I don't. I just think it's in the wrong place. And my goal as a 35-year resident of the town of Waukesha is to bring in as much revenue as we possibly can. And I think in order to do that, we would have to come up with some sort of plan where we are contacting businesses to make them be aware of that area. I don't know how else you would do that. I've never had to do that before, but it seems to me that from a tax-based purpose, this is a longer-term program to make those properties available for businesses as opposed to a residential property. Perhaps I'm wrong in my thinking, but I think that the town of Waukesha needs to have as much space for business as they possibly can.
Thank you, Commissioner. Who else from the Plan Commission or Board would like to speak?
Can I say one?
I've got to warn everyone that everything you say you know, the cliche, can and will be used against you.
I'm sure it will.
Okay, and there's all likelihood that this could go to litigation. This is a conditional use request. We should be sticking to the issue at hand and not run too far afield. I've got to tell you that there are very specific new laws about conditional uses. You all know my opinion about what the legislature did, or if you don't, I'll be happy to share it with you, but the legislature has changed conditional uses from a privilege to a right. And if they meet the conditions by substantial evidence, the requirements and the conditions, you have to now approve a conditional use. And we can't deny it on reasons that don't go to the requirements and the conditions. And so be very careful by just giving your opinion, because it could be a problem. Opinion from the citizens or opinions from the board. We have to be cautious. And I just have to give that, we've given training on the conditional uses. Some of the new members wouldn't have been at that training, but we have to stick. We have a petition. We're gonna go through the grid. Some of these comments may be more pertinent when you go through the grid, but I just wanted to make that caveat before we get too far afield.
Okay,
That's up to the chair.
thank you, Attorney Macy. Sure.
Can I ask Attorney a question? Can this be postponed until a decision is made, until the town decides what that area is going to be? Because right now it's agricultural, and there's talk based on what Mr. Doris just said, about having it commercial or commercial office, and I did listen to the video on that. And can it not be postponed until that decision is made?
Well, obviously, you have to act within, or the answer to your question, the legal answer to your question is you have to act on a petition within a reasonable time. Okay? That's the legal answer. What the town decides may be immaterial because it was what it was on the date they filed.
Okay.
And to pull the rug out or change your mind, some court would not be too sympathetic.
Okay.
They came in with it zoned A1. They came in with it as a comprehensive plan under commercial office. You said you listened, many of you were here. There was discussion on whether to change that to commercial or mixed use, thank you. And the decision was made to leave it the way it is. So we're dealing with zone A1 and commercial office. And I think we have to state that those are the facts. And there's been no change, there's nothing on the record that would change that. There's nothing on the horizon that we're working on. The decision has been made from this body as to how to proceed petition.
Right, this particular property, after the discussion, has ended up as commercial office. That is the long-term vision for this property.
In fact, historically, that was the vision when the town adopted the first comprehensive
Correct.
plan back in, I think the official adoption date was sometime late in 2009, effective in 2010, and our comprehensive plan, which includes the land use plan, which, assuming it's up to date or relatively so behind Commissioner White there, is an integral part of that comprehensive plan. I mean, just even backing up a bit with our comprehensive plan, sometimes referred to as a smart growth plan, my vision, and somebody might choose different language, that was basically, I'm going to call it a directive or an edict that came down from Madison, not only to our town of Waukesha here, but to other communities as well, to basically plan transportation, land development, economic development, a whole host of things that came down from Madison. We revisited that, and we started on that, some 5 or 6 months ago. Sean, help me out. Middle of summer or thereabouts?
I think about May.
May,
We
okay,
kind of
well,
started on it, yeah.
time flies, some 7, 8 months ago, and the town board, and I believe it was it last month at the 12th that we acted and made some revisions to it. This land use for that particular piece of property stayed intact. So thanks for the questions. Thanks for the assist there, Attorney Macy. Other comments or questions from the Plan Commissioner Town Board?
Yeah, I've got one for Mr. Crotty.
Are these properties gonna be solely owned by somebody, or are they gonna be solely owned by the people that live there, or are they gonna be rental properties?
No, there'll be condominiums. Each unit would be owned by the people who live within the unit.
Okay.
Okay, who else? Commissioner White?
I guess I just have a little comment. I guess, I believe I was on the 2008, 2009 when they revisited the land use map plan, and we went through this back in the day, and a lot of workshops. I can't even tell you how many we had, lots. And the plan came up to what we have today, and we revisited here now again, and to maybe possibly change the land use that we have adopted. I agree that it's a beautiful place for the commercial settings. My question is to the two engineers that are sitting over there, we'll probably eventually get there, but maybe we could speed things up, would be, does the petitioner meet all your regulations, requirements that, that worksheet that we have in place?
Well, a lot of the conditions are subjective in terms of whether or not it violates the spirit and intent of the ordinance, whether or not it promotes general health, safety, and welfare, those types of things, and those are essentially the Plan Commission's responsibility and the board's responsibility to answer. We can provide the facts, do they meet the requirements where it says the density or the setbacks and those things, and, or, you know, yes, in my opinion, they meet the numerical quantitative requirements based on the conditions of a residential PUD, but there are larger items, more general items that need to be discussed by the Plan Commission and the board.
Okay. I have a question or a concern, and this might almost sound like an echo. I had no idea whatsoever that Mr. Hom was going to get up and speak tonight, let alone what he would have to say. But I have a concern because on the meeting back on the 12th of December, I posed them as questions, but seeking very specific information in 6 different areas, and I appreciate you responded to number 4, Sean, in your letter of December 30th. And without getting into that, unless I've overlooked something, we don't have answers to number 1, number 2, number 3, number 5, and number 6. And absent that information, I don't know how we can proceed tonight. I mean, I was seeking some very specific factual information.
So,
You want to speak?
Chairman, at 411, the reason why Sean did not do the other questions was because they were divvied up between different areas. Instead of Sean putting in all the work, I had the county put together, you've got the new updated map. They did the calculations, and they came in at about 11 minutes after 4 today. So the residential, which was, what was question number 1? Let me see if I can answer all your questions, sir.
Well, I'm just going to tell you, I really think this is kind of an awkward and untimely point in time to try to address those. I mean, I guess you can talk if you want, but this isn't the time or place to come up with answers to that. And if the county dragged their feet, so be it, but this is not a timely place to do that.
Mr. Chairman, did you have the board, or did you have the clerk forward those questions to the board and Plan Commission?
No.
I didn't tell her to do it. I'll tell you what I did get is I got an email communication from Sean on Friday, December 13th at 12:26 p.m. I mean, that was the day right after the meeting. He asked me, "Hi, Brian, you had some questions that you wanted answered for the continued public hearing for Rolling Meadows. I have notes, but you mentioned that you would also forward them to me. This would be helpful. Thank you." And Monday, December 16th, Kathy came to me, copied Sean in on that, and said, "Please send me the questions as well for the minutes." And on the 18th of December, week before Christmas, I sent out to Kathy and Sean and said, "Here you go. Please note that my use of the word commercial in the questions is intended to include commercial office." So I passed those along on the 18th of December. What happened after that, I don't know.
So
Want me to get those questions?
you never asked that those be forwarded on to the planning commission and the members of the town board?
No, I didn't ask for that. I mean, I read them directly at the meeting,
Well, yeah.
assuming they would be in the minutes. No, I didn't tell her send them to everybody. I did not.
When you made your reading at the meeting, you stated that you'd provide them in writing, and I just was waiting for those, so I just was wondering if you.
I did provide them in writing, but again, I can't send those to the board members if I wanted to. That'd be a walking quorum, and we've been through
That
that
is
over
true,
and over,
but
so I
there-
can't do that.
There are, I don't know if it's hundreds, that might be an exaggeration, but there are tens of emails that I've gotten from the clerk that specifically come at your direction, such as, please forward this to the remaining members of the board. I mean, we get many emails.
I didn't direct her to do that. Did you ask her for it? Did you ask her if you wanted
I
it?
just asked if you directed her to do it. You
And-
answered the question.
And I did not. My question is, did you ask her for it?
I didn't.
Okay, thank you.
So, Chairman, I think one of your questions was what the total lands of the town of Waukesha in acres were. There's 13,603.3 acres in the town. Our breakout of our residential, we have 6,334.1 acres of residential property in our land use, which is 46.5%. Our agriculture is 1,051.5 acres, or 7.7% of the land. Our commercial property is 422.5 acres, or 3.1% of the land. Our industrial is 158.1 acres, or 1.1% of the land. The other question you had was when the PUDs were put in place. We found that there were no PUDs in, my staff did some research. We did not find PUDs in the zoning code that went back to 2003, but we did find it in 2010s.
And do we know what date that was put in place?
Not the exact date.
Okay.
I found the two codes, and through our research, we know that it was done before 2010, but not prior to 2003.
Say that one more time.
So in 2003, the zoning code did not include PUDs, but in 2010, the zoning code did include PUDs.
Okay. So that happened, your conclusion is happened somewhere as early as 2003 or 2004 and could have happened sometime in 2010.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I will just tell you for my point, I think we need that information reduced to writing. I think we need it to be presented so people can thoughtfully consider it. For my part, I think that needs to be provided before this hearing is closed. Other comments or questions from anybody on the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I actually have just a comment, maybe just to the clerk, I guess. My question is, did the people in the surrounding neighborhood or in the area, like, I'm gonna say, let's say east of 164, that neighborhood, get notified for maybe the different usage that property may take place instead of the commercial slash?
For the public hearing, 300 feet around, we're notified.
So, so I'm not sure if they're within 300 feet. Did they make the 300 feet, or were they
Yeah,
notified?
if they're across
against-
the street, yes,
They all get notified?
because it's less than 300 feet from the property line to the neighbors across the street.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Yeah, I got one quick question, I guess, for Mr. Crotty. When did Rolling Meadows Townhomes acquire this, or I guess it's parcels two of land?
When did these parcels get acquired? I do not have that date off the top of my head. I can't tell you exactly.
Does July of 2019 or thereabouts, does that sound correct?
Again, I can't answer with specificity on if that is the exact date.
Did you have well, I guess at this point in time, you have an interest in that entity at this time, do you?
I am part of Rolling Meadows LLC, yes. And
Okay. And were you at the time that the property was acquired?
I was not.
Okay. Do you know whether anybody at Rolling Meadows Townhomes LLC knew what the town's comprehensive plan or land use for that property was on the date of acquisition?
I cannot speak to that.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Other questions, comments?
In 50 feet, your destination will be on the right.
You're here.
It's on the right.
I guess we're here. Let me turn that off. Goodness.
Mr. Crotty, did I interrupted you before? Did you want to continue, or is there anybody else in the audience?
Yes, I do.
Commissioner West, then
Let me just
let's
make this stop
can we let
here.
Mr. Ham jump in for a quick minute, and then you can go,
All right.
Mr. Ham.
Yeah, I just, the numbers that we just got left me wondering something, which was, I mean, Kathy, unless I got the numbers wrong, you're somewhere just north of 58% of the land accounted for. So I'm curious what the other 41.5% is. I'm not sure whether, I mean, we didn't tally recreational
Right.
or, you know, other things, I guess, but I don't know how many other categories there could be to come up to 42% of our town. And the other question I had, having been, excuse me, having experienced a number of conditional use permits and seen them amended and then amended and then amended, I'm just wondering if this conditional use were approved for the 10 units, if they were to change their minds and want to come back and put in 40 units, what would be the process for amending the plan to adjust the number of units, or would the plan be fixed at the 10 units, having experienced all of the updates and changes to conditional uses that I've seen? Thank you.
Sean or John, do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, the answer is they are locked at 10 units on this particular property because that's what the conditional use requirements maxes out at based on the amount of land that they have and the amount of open space they're providing. The maximum open space you get any credit for is 50%. They're providing 70%, yet they can still only get 10 units because that's how the math works out. The only way they could potentially come back and amend their comprehensive plan to get more units is if the zoning ordinance itself was updated to allow conditional uses to have greater density for residential plan unit developments. In terms of the other question about the map and the categories in the map that are missing, that would be the roads, the environmental corridors, open space, recreational, governmental, educational, yeah, those things.
That's not what the questions were. The questions were
Okay.
specific to the residential, commercial, and that's the numbers that I gave.
Let's let this gentleman chat one more time, please. I know we keep putting you off. I apologize.
You have an opportunity to get some tax money. These homes are going to be paying taxes. You don't have an opportunity looking for someone to buy this and put up some other business. It hasn't happened for multiple years. Not saying it won't, but here you have an opportunity to use this land that's been kicked around and sold, and the school district and the history of it. And you're gonna get taxes out of it. It's not gonna be overwhelming traffic pattern, which industry might do that, or offices. It's a difficult roadway to come in and off of. That's why no one's building on it. They have to offset it so far to make it possible to get on and off of 164. And you already have residential near it, which it would complement. So I don't know why, but I'm in favor of this, because putting it off is gonna make it sit empty for who knows? It's sat this long empty. You have an opportunity to use the land, and I'm sure he'll sell all 10 units because people want that type of location. Like you said, it's got good access for a residential to 43 or into the town.
As you're wrapping up, just give us your name once more. I mean, we know you're up here
Terry
before,
Bork,
but
West 238 South 537 Chestnut Trail.
thank you, Terry. Okay, I've interrupted Mr. Crowdy about 6 times now. Anybody else before we give it back to him? Okay, go ahead.
All right, first of all, I'd like to say that Mr. Bork makes a lot of sense. I like what he says. As a note, this parcel has a problem with the access that it has off of Glendale Road. The DOT is not going to give you access to 164. We sought it and they said no because of the access off Glendale. That is a huge detriment to anybody who would want to do anything commercial there. They are not going to deal with that long driveway and coming off that. Additionally, you certainly do have plenty more parcels along 164 for your hopeful commercial development down the road. But as Attorney Macy very succinctly stated, what would be ideal for the parcel is not really the question here. The question is, do I meet the conditions of the conditional use, yes or no? And this is the part where I submit evidence or explain via the matrix sheet on why I do meet those conditions. And that's really the only decision here. Do I meet the conditions or do I not? And if I do meet them, then it needs to be approved. The conditional use needs to be approved. So with that being said, I guess we might as well get right into the criteria. I'll try to make it as quick as possible. So on the sheet, under section A1, are all sanitary provisions approved by the county health department? And the answer is yes. The plan for the septics has been submitted to the county and it has been approved. And that plan's been submitted to you. Number 2, is the proposed development contrary to the general welfare or economic balance of the community, and that benefits and amenities of the resultant development justify the variation from the normal requirements on the district? And I do believe that it does benefit the general community. As has been stated, it provides another 10 dwelling units. It adds tax base. It puts something on the land that probably will not have anything for a long time. I think it does benefit the community. All right, number 3, that all other requirements of the PUD are met as set forth. And per the report from the planner, which was also submitted, the, what was that? That was, sorry. Yes, the staff briefing. We have met the other requirements as far as the PUD, as far as density and setbacks, so yes. All right, residential plan unit development, B1. The development does not exceed the maximum dwelling unit density and minimum common open space requirement for the PUD A1 zoning. And again, per the Planning Commission review dated 12/2/19, we are within the density and we have adequate open space. 2, the common open space clearly delineated within the development as an outlot or easement and should not include open space within a developable lot up to 20% of the land in the proposed development. Do we meet that requirement? Yes, we do. 3, adequate guarantee for the permanent retention of common open space resulting from these regulations by private reservation, public dedication, buildings use, non-commercial, recreational or auxiliary facilities may be permitted in such common open space area with the approval of the town plan boards. So 3, the open spaces will be guaranteed to have no further development. That'll be written into the condominium laws. and they will be preserved, that's number 4. Perpetual care and maintenance of the open space shall be provided with an operational plan and submitted for approval to the town. And yes, we will have a plan for perpetual care of the open spaces to be done for and paid for by the condominium association, recorded in the condominium dockets for approval for the town. And ownership and tax liability of the open space shall be established in a manner acceptable to the town. The open space will continue to be owned for and taxes paid by the association. Okay, moving on to section 4235, section 4. Will not violate the spirit or intent of the ordinance. So the conditional use ordinance obviously allows for things to be developed that maybe the land isn't zoned for. So in this case, it is zoned agricultural, but we have conditional use to allow residential, as many residences are put into agricultural land. So that's the point of that, and we are not violating the spirit of the intent to do that. All right. Will not be contrary to public health, safety, or welfare. No, it will not harm public safety or welfare. It will not, section 3, will not be hazardous, harmful, noxious, offensive, or a nuisance by reasons of noise, dust, smoke, odor, similar factor, or any other reason cause a substantial adverse effect on the property values and general desirability of the neighborhood. It's going to be 10 luxury condominiums that will not be noxious or offensive, and it should only raise the overall value of the result of the neighbors. And section 4, except as may be specifically otherwise provided, any such use shall conform to the building location, height, and area regulations of the district in which it's located, and the approving body may require compliance with such other conditions as may be deemed necessary in the specific situation. And again, we conform with all the height and location regulations of the applicable zoning. All right. And, okay. Section 2A, a total of 10 units is permitted. Okay, that is correct. And section B, minimum setbacks of 25 feet from Rolling Meadows Drive, 10 feet from the front condo unit boundaries, offset of 10 feet from the side condo unit boundaries, and minimum offset of 20 feet from the rear condo boundaries. And we meet those offsets and setbacks. All right, 3A. Petitioner shall satisfy all comments, conditions, and concerns of the town board engineer for all site grading and construction plans, and we will do that. B, the petitioner shall obtain the necessary approvals and satisfy all comments, conditions, and concerns of the town of Waukesha for a condominium plat and associated documents, developer's agreement, land stewardship plan, addressing the maintenance and management of the common areas. We will also provide all those documents and get them to you in a approvable and satisfactory condition. The petitioner shall obtain the necessary approvals and satisfy all comments, conditions, and concerns of the Waukesha County Department of Land Resource for erosion control, stormwater management plan, including stormwater maintenance agreement. And we will certainly get all the necessary approvals for all those things. And lastly, the petitioner shall obtain the necessary approvals and satisfy all comments, conditions, concern of the Waukesha County Environmental Health Department for the well and septics. And going over our additional preliminary approval, we'll certainly make sure that our plan matches all their requirements. So all those documents have been submitted, and that is it for my presenting of my evidence.
Okay, thank you. I've got I guess a quick question or two for you that you might be able to answer or help out with, and I'm actually following up on what I'd called question 5 and 6 back when we opened the hearing on December 12th. And 5 was, I posed this as a question. I think we know the answer, maybe you can answer it, but the question is it true that there is language pertaining to planned unit developments, PUDs, in the conditional use section of the Town of Waukesha Code of Ordinances? I think the answer to that is yes. That's the provision of our code that you're using to put forth your proposal. So you'd agree with me the answer to that is yes?
Yes, I believe so. I would think you could direct that to Attorney Macy first. He would probably be able to tell that answer for you specifically.
I think that's kind of a given. Sean, this is a simple one? That's in
Residential
your report
PUD
and
is a
everything.
conditional use in the code currently.
Right,
yes.
there we go. And then my question to that, or the corollary question to that, is it true that there's language pertaining to planned unit developments in the agricultural A1 zoning district section of the Town of Waukesha Town Code of Ordinances? The answer to that is true, right? Yes. So the questions to those are, it's in 2 different parts of the code. That's what you're relying on. You wouldn't be here tonight were it not for those provisions in the code, correct? So my question on that is, and we didn't get a definitive answer, was if so, on what date was the language incorporated into the code? And my specific question to you would be, do you know whether that language was put into the code, Town of Waukesha Code of Ordinances, before or after the Town of Waukesha adopted its smart growth plan or comprehensive plan some 10 years ago? Do you know the answer to that?
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay, and I guess I will submit, I think we need to get a definitive answer to that, and that's one of the reasons that I'm going to suggest that this public hearing be continued till we get the answer to that, and till we get what was verbalized about all of the acreage and so forth in the Town of Waukesha, so people have a chance to consider that and digest it. So we'll take additional comments, but my suggestion is going to be we need to continue this public hearing.
Could I ask how that question would come into play as far as this decision on whether I've met the evidence?
The question about
when the codes, when the
Sure.
PUD
Yeah,
codes.
it's because basically, and I'll paraphrase it, we've been through this once before, state statute does not allow us to amend create or amend a town ordinance to allow something to take place that is inconsistent with our comprehensive plan. And Attorney Macy or Planner Malarkey might help with that a bit, but basically if our comprehensive plan was to use that for commercial office space at the time that provisions were put into the ordinance to allow PUDs on that agricultural land, it would run afoul of that state statute. That's the answer. So that's why the date is critically important, to be able to clear that up.
And when was the comprehensive plan adopted?
2009.
2000.
I don't know the month off the top of my head, but it was 2009.
It was late 2009, and it went into, did it go into effect on adoption, or was it, do you know the answer to that, Attorney Macy, or was it as of the first of the year? We were obliged to, we need to research that rather than guess. I mean, I think there was some, again, it was foisted down from Madison, if you will, and I think there was some expectation of the timeliness of doing it, but I think we need to do some additional research and get those specific answers, and I think they're out there somewhere. They're just not here tonight.
And your point or your question is, when did the conditional use ordinances get adopted?
For planned unit developments,
For PUDs,
which is what you're
when did that get
proposing,
development?
and when did that go into the agricultural zoning district section of it?
All right, and if that got adopted after the comprehensive plan, your belief is that would be a problem. Why?
Because I think there's a state statute that would not permit that.
And would you happen to know what statute that was?
We've been through it at great length on another matter. I don't remember it off the top of my head. Maybe somebody else does, but we could get it to you. I do not have that committed to memory.
Okay. Attorney Macy, do you happen to know?
I do not.
right?
Other comments, questions?
So my only comment is, it was stated before that the PUDs were put into the code, the language was put in the code sometime between 2003 and 2010, right? That's what you found based on your research? So you're saying then because the smart growth plan was adopted in 2009, may have gone into effect in 2009 or early 2010, you're saying that there might be an overlap there, and that if the ordinance was updated in 2010 after the comp plan was adopted, you think there's a potential conflict?
Yeah. And I think that's what we need to find out, and I think that answer's there someplace. May take some real digging and stuff into the records, but I think the answers are someplace, and I think we need that information.
And so help me understand, and just in case I'm asked to help with the research, the language itself is general in nature. So the residential PUD conditional use allows it in a variety of districts, a variety of residential districts and the ag district as well. And so is your question that because it's allowed in the ag district, allowing residential use in the ag district is against the comprehensive plan? Or because the comprehensive plan states it as commercial office, and that because
It's about the comprehensive plan, not about the zoning. It's about the comprehensive plan, and that's what the state statute speaks to.
Right, but properties are zoned all the time and used all the time differently from what the comprehensive plan envisions them for.
I'm not going to argue tonight, but you need to go straight to the statute
Right,
and look at it.
but the only point I want to make is that if they wanted to build a house on this property today, they could, because it's zoned ag, there's certain protections that are there.
Well, sure, people have had farmhouses on agricultural land
Certainly.
since the start of time, but
Certainly.
that's different than a planned unit development.
Right, but we also know that the existing use of the property allows that particular conditional use. And we also know, because the state statutes say that conditional uses do not need to be consistent with the comprehensive plan because it's baked into the zoning. With your zoning, you have certain property rights. They're not asking for land division. They're asking to use their property as it's currently zoned and the conditional use that's currently allowed as part of that. So that's my opinion, not on this property in particular, but any property that has a specific zoning on it. There are certain rights that come with it. If this was a land division, we might be able to say something different because the land division ordinance specifically says it's got to be consistent with the comprehensive plan if you're dividing land.
And respectfully, I might agree with much of what you said, but that's not the answer to the question that I asked.
Sure, and so we'll get you we'll try to find when the dates were that you asked for.
Okay, anyone else who would like to speak?
So I got one more question. I just want to clarify. So for what you told us, the conditional use, even if it was adopted after the comprehensive plan, it does not have to agree with the comprehensive plan in order to be granted a conditional use.
There's a provision in the statutes that state that conditional use permits do not have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Okay, so in the statutes, they do not have to be consistent. So if that is true, why does it matter whether that conditional use got added after or before the comprehensive plan if there's statute that says it does not have to?
Because, and we're not going to argue that out tonight, but a different part of the statute says you cannot create or amend an ordinance after your comprehensive plan has been adopted that's inconsistent with it. That's a different part of it. That's the answer.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Anybody else?
that helps clarify exactly what you're getting at.
Sure. Okay, anyone else who would desire to speak? Thank you, Mr. Crowdy. Then we need to decide at this point in time whether to close this public hearing or whether to adjourn it and continue it at a later date. Those are the choices before us. And I've expressed my belief that till we get definitive answers to those questions that we can act on, I think this continuation of the hearing is the only thing that makes sense.
I would move to adjourn the public hearing until we get those answers.
I second that.
Well, we can't do it indefinitely. We have to adjourn to a time and date purpose, or else we have to remail everything, and so,
February 13th.
and if we say till it answers, we may never get answers.
February
That is
February
February
13th.
13th.
At
2020.
That's 6:30?
At 6:30.
Thank you.
Okay, and was there a second to that motion then?
I second that motion.
Okay, so the motion was by Commissioner Fuller, seconded by Commissioner Cisney. Go ahead, I'll let you speak.
Do we know who is going to answer those questions? Who's going to be tasked with that?
Is there only one question? Because I only have one question.
Well, here, okay, we'll clear that up before we vote. I mean, it's still back to, I guess, questions
I
1
only have
through
one question.
3. We really need to have that in writing.
Okay, then
And
I have
then, what, it's questions 5 and 6. There you go. It's 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, okay? All right, is everyone,
Can I specifically ask that those
Sure.
questions be forwarded to the Plan Commission and the Town Board?
Will do.
Thank you.
yeah, fine. Is everyone okay with voting in total, the Plan Commission and the Town Board on adjourning the public hearing and continuing on the 13th of February? Is that
So, and
acceptable to everybody?
just if we can, what is the specific additional question? I mean, we had the questions that you felt didn't get answered from last time, right?
Yes,
And then what is the specific additional question?
there isn't. It's 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6.
And that includes the state statute question?
Well, once we have the information, that may be irrelevant. I mean, if the answer to questions 5 and 6, if the PUD,
Well, I don't have them in writing,
Language.
so I can't work from numbers, so.
Well,
What is questions 5 and 6?
hand it down the table to them. If we have that information, it may not be problematic.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions acceptable to everybody as we vote as a group? Okay, all in favor then of the motion to continue this public hearing on February 13th, 2020 at 6:30 indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, I heard that passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Crowley. We'll pick it up again in a month. Thank you. Okay, next then, we're skipping through item 9, inasmuch as the public hearing is still open. We go to item 10. I'll read in the rather lengthy agenda item and its continuation. A public hearing with the Town of Waukesha Plan Commission and Town Board on Thursday, December 12, 2019, for the purpose of hearing public comment on the proposed Town of Waukesha Code Text Amendment to repeal and recreate sections 42-35, 42-44, 42-83, 42-84, 42-85, 42-86, 42-87, 42-88, 42-89, 42-90, 42-91, 42-92, 42-94, and 42-95 related to conditional uses in the Town of Waukesha zoning, and 42-91, 42-92, and 42-93 related to permitted usage or uses. There are 3 parts to this. Again, this public hearing began on the 12th of December. We're going to have a review by Planner Malarkey and Attorney Macy. And after that, we'll, in fact, resume the public hearing and continue from there. So, Planner Malarkey or Attorney Macy, you want to take it away, please?
I prepared a draft. We asked Sean to go back and check. I did a review of the ordinance, and I don't know exactly who has all of the review letters or everything, so I'll just summarize. We did a review of the ordinance. Well, I don't know. I guess I summarized it last month. We got all the way through the ordinance. We were almost done with the ordinance. We were confronted with a specific fact situation, and we wanted to address that fact situation. And so we pulled all the hard work that had been done for, I don't know, a year or so. Some of you would know better. And we made some changes. We came to you and we got direction, as to what if the, and I'm paraphrasing, but I think these are the words we use, which of the CUs that we originally were going to repeal are no-brainers, and we could put them back in, okay? And that's what we did. We inserted a number of conditional uses back into the code. We made other changes to the verbiage to protect the town. I can go through that with specificity if you'd like, but I think we've talked about that before, and so I'm just giving a general overview. We're pretty well set to go, and I did my review, and I had a couple of comments. The planner then went back based on my comments to make sure that we had everything listed correctly. So what you have before you recently off the press is an ordinance with all of Sean's comments inserted, addressing my comments, and it changed nothing substantively. All it did was make sure all the lists were correct for each of the zoning districts. Because originally, as you recall, we took them all out. Then we put a few back in, the no-brainers. And now all we did for this meeting tonight is make sure that the lists properly placed the no-brainers back into the proper zoning districts. And I'll defer to Sean as to whether I've summarized that correctly.
That is correct. I guess the only substantive thing that we've changed since the last time around was to add a definition for daycare, which was asked of us.
Thank you for that.
Why don't you just, if you would, and again, there's a
Give an
swarm of
overview.
paper here, can you, just for purpose of everybody present, do you have that in front of you, the definition of daycare?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Can-
absolutely.
Why don't you just, I think that's worthy of, because we had, a number of months ago, we were looking for it, to cover it for you on time, but I mean, we had significant discussion in terms of what constituted daycare, what constituted nursery,
Yeah,
that type
yeah.
of thing, so the
Yeah,
definition is
so
important.
nursery school was always a permitted use in the public institutional district, but it wasn't allowed, and so the interpretation was that nursery school probably included daycare for the P1 district. And so you've asked us to also consider it for the business districts, and so now daycare facilities are permitted uses, or proposed as permitted uses in the B1, B2, and B3 district. And the definition is simply, it means state licensed group child care centers providing care for 9 or more children for less than 24 hours per day. Does not include licensed or unlicensed child care within a provider's residence that meet the requirements of a home occupation.
Okay, so that's pretty well nailed down.
Right.
Good, okay, thank you. Do you have
want
more
it-
to say at this
Do you,
point in
no,
time?
do you want it, I mean, do you want us to recap very quickly what the changes were in general?
I think you ought to do it and do it reasonably quickly, and then we'll open this up for,
So we've added
public
language to address the substantial evidence review and approval procedures for conditional uses, much like we talked about and worked through tonight. So that was missing before, and we've added that. We've reduced the list of conditional uses, and again, as Attorney Macy pointed out, we left in the conditional uses that had substantive enough conditions to protect the town. And so those were the commercial residential ponds, commercial kennels, commercial vehicle operation and parking, in-law units, multifamily, residential PUDs, senior housing, event venues, and we got rid of communication structures and we replaced it with wireless telecommunication, mobile service facilities. Senior housing now is a conditional use in the R3 district. It always was, but it's also a permitted use in the B1, B2, and B3 districts. The same conditions apply, whether it's a conditional use in the R3 or whether it's a permitted use in the B1, B2, or B3 district, except in the permitted section in the business districts, it doesn't require a public hearing. Event venues are now limited only to the business districts rather than any district. Wireless telecommunication facilities includes a full list of regulations that's allowable by law, very comprehensive. That language was provided by Attorney Macy. It gives you as much protection as is possibly allowed by the state. We've also added provision that you can continue existing PUDs. So if you have a PUD and it's repealed from the ordinance, you can continue operating that, and you can actually also amend your PUD according to whatever provisions were in place at the time it was approved according to your conditional use permit. So that,
Now, Sean, you said PUD, do you mean all CUs?
I'm sorry, all CUs.
I wanted to make sure I didn't do it wrong.
Yeah, I looked at CUP and said PUD. Yes, conditional use permits. And then finally, we added, again, daycare facilities to the business districts and added a definition.
Okay, terrific. I'm sure everybody's got all of that completely understood. Then we'll resume the public hearing or continue it. Again, we'll go first to the folks that are in the audience. Anyone who would come up and give your name, address, microphone, and make any comments you want on the proposed changes to conditional and permitted uses. Anyone? Okay, then, if there's no one from the audience, anyone from the Plan Commission or Town Board, questions, comments, thoughts?
Specifically, what we as a staff want to make sure as you look through this, that there are enough requirements and conditions under each one that when faced with having to issue them, if all those requirements and conditions are met, you're willing, as required by the law, to issue them. I mean, we did our best, and we put in, I think in-law unit is an example, and PUDs is some of them. We took the ones that were already quite a few protections, and we beefed them up when we thought it was necessary. Sean did. I don't want to take credit for that. But that's what we were charged to do, but you have to decide now whether you agree or not. There aren't that many, so hopefully you could, you can glance at them and see. For instance, event venue is a very specific one. It had a lot of conditions, and Sean, to the best of my recollection, it's in there, but now it can only be in certain limited districts, where in the past it could be in any zoning district. If my recollection is correct, that was a specific direction from you.
Correct.
To add an additional requirement / condition to event venues. And we did that with others also, but that's one that we were specifically directed to do. But that's an example.
The ones we left in, they're actually very minimal changes to the ones we left in, because we were told just do the ones that don't really take any work, that are pretty good as they are, and so those were our recommendations for the ones that we thought had adequate protections. If, as Attorney Macy mentioned, if you feel that that's not the case, or there are other conditions that need to be added, we can certainly address that.
And just for clarification, I think I'm right on this. If we act on this and act on it favorably tonight, that doesn't preclude the possibility of adding additional conditional uses in the future. I mean, theoretically, those could happen as quickly as a month or two down the road. It doesn't preclude the possibility of adding additional permitted uses. It doesn't preclude the possibility of taking conditional uses and changing them into permitted uses. I mean, all those things are possible downstream by what future, either this or future plan commissions or town boards might do. Is that true?
Yeah, whether plan commissions or boards might do, or whether applicants come in and petition for a change in the zoning ordinance to add a conditional use.
So it's not cast in stone forever.
Correct.
Okay. Questions, comments? Go.
Something that the attorney brought up was like the in-law unit. And here it specifies that an in-law unit cannot exceed 800 square feet. Do we need to be that limiting when there's 2 bedrooms and, do we have to be that specific?
Our recommendation would be you have to be specific as to a size. As to whether that's the right size or not is a policy decision. I've had a number of communities, and Sean can reply to this also, who have increased that recently.
Yeah.
But that's a policy decision, and we weren't authorized to make those kind of changes. But that's the purpose of the public hearing. That's exactly why we're here tonight. If you think 1,000 or 1,200 is a better size in this day and age, that's your prerogative. Sean, what have you seen? I know you and I have worked on this for other,
I actually can't think of anything off the top of my head for in-law units, but I guess 1,000 feet would be, sort of the upper limit that I would envision, because anything larger than that is getting to be almost a full house size, or small house size. So if you feel strongly about that, we can certainly discuss that and even make the change tonight.
Yeah.
Do you think that should be bumped up, or are you thinking about it, or what?
1,000 square feet in today's day, because of, especially if they have in-laws that have physical limits, and it's very difficult with large beds and walkers and whatnot. You need room. And I think 1,000 is pretty reasonable.
Okay, then we'll take that as a public comment, because we're going to do the hearing part of it. I mean, we can take that up and address it with specificity if we want to, assuming we get to the point, if we close the hearing tonight, we'll be looking at acting on this, and we can resume at that time. I'm going to then open this up again to anybody in the audience who wants to speak, or if you're not persuaded, we'll go back to the Plan Commission or Town Board here. I guess anybody at this point in time. Have you had sufficient amount of time to familiarize yourself with that? I don't want to cut the public hearing short, and we do have a speaker coming forth.
Good.
Name and address again, please.
Betty Paget, South 57 West 22641 Woodside Court. I have to agree with our new member of Kathy Piala with the square feet. If you have a couple living somewhere, they have to have live-in help. You're going to have 3 bedrooms. And I think 1,000 square feet is going to be pretty small for 3 bedrooms, especially if you have wheelchairs.
I still have 2 bedrooms.
Because you have to have bigger kitchens, you have to have bigger bathrooms, you have to have roll-in showers, all of this. And I'm thinking 1,200, because that would be a normal size, very small house. I don't know what the rest of you think, but I do know, I have been in a wheelchair, I had a mother in a wheelchair, I know how much space it takes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Do we sense that this has been sufficiently aired that we can close the public hearing? If we do, a motion to do that would be in order. You have anything more, Attorney Macy, you want to add?
Nope.
Sean, you got anything more?
I don't.
Kathy?
No,
You have
but I don't
something?
think you need a motion, do you? I think you just can close it.
Well, I guess that's prerogative. Do we need to have the Board of Plan Commission act on that, or can I just close the public hearing? Do you have a preference?
Legally, I don't have a preference. Each community does it their own way. Many times the chairman will say, if no objection, the public hearing is closed.
Pleasure of the group. I'll give you about 5 seconds to make a motion. If nobody wants to do it, I'll take care of it. All right, this public hearing is closed, if that's okay. It's too late. All right, then we're going to go on to item number 11, which is the same topic, but it's discussion and possible action on Waukesha Town Code text amendment to repeal and recreate sections 42-35, 42-44, 42-83, 42-84, 42-85, 42-86, 42-87, 42-88, 42-89, 42-90, 42-91, 42-92, 42-94, and 42-94 related to conditional uses in the town of Waukesha zoning code, and 42-91, 42-92, and 42-93 related to permitted uses. Sub A, B, and C are discussion by the Plan Commission, Town Board, so we'll discuss that jointly. Then possible action by the Plan Commission, possible action by the Town Board. So this is the time to act on this entirety. You can offer proposed changes. I mean, we can take it up as a motion. We can take those things up as amendments to the motions. There's a couple of different ways we can go about doing this. Anybody want to weigh in? We did have comments about size of in-law suite. We've heard from Commissioner Piala on that. Others of you would like to weigh in on that?
I'm just curious, what are the downsides of raising the square foot limit and number of bedrooms?
The only downside, I guess, is just the mass of the house. You already have a large house and you have an addition to it. You know, it becomes something more than a single-family home, the larger it gets, and another wing onto a building. Attorney Mays, do you have an opinion on that?
The downside is the more it looks like a two-family, the more realtors list it as a two-family, it gets mortgaged as a two-family, and it causes you a problem down the road trying to enforce that it's a single family with an in-law unit. When the original in-law unit conditional uses were drafted, they were very specific that they had to look like just a little suite for an in-law. It was restricted as to who could live there, where it could be located in relationship to the rest of the house. Like, did you have to have a common door? In the past, you had to. But it was 800 feet, 2 bedrooms, mom and dad are moving in, and, you know, it's really, yes, they could have a separate cooking, but it wasn't supposed to be like a separate living unit. That has changed over the years, I have to say. More and more communities are granting greater privacy to the in-laws. You can actually build them now, and your code's written, I believe, I just checked it, that the in-law unit can be here, the garage can be here, and the main house can be over here, as long as it looks like one house. And so that was not allowed originally. The biggest problem is when it gets rented out to other than the in-law. And the bigger it is, the more bedrooms there are, I agree with Sean, the more tempting it is to say, mom and dad are gone, but we got this big house and we're gonna make some money off of it. And until you get a complaint, we really don't do anything about it. And we shouldn't. I mean, we should reply to every complaint, don't get me wrong. We shouldn't have in-law police. I'm not recommending that, but that's the downside, the bigger they are.
Is it possible to add stipulations over a certain number of square feet? Like you can only have, you know, not 2 entrances, 2, you know, separate entrances, or some other possible means of?
Yeah, that's in your code. I think if we go to that page, you're gonna see that the Plan Commission has the right, I don't wanna just say Plan Commission, but maybe we should go to it on page 13. On the draft that I have, it may be slightly different. So they have to have the location, building plan, site plan, and plan of operation, so that would come up under number 1, that issue. The architecture doesn't change. It has to look like a single-family house, okay? The Town Plan Commission, under Roman numeral 5, shall determine if it's appropriate to have an interior door between the living units if the living units are contiguous, but not required that the living units be contiguous. And then the deed restriction is still in here, occupied by no more than 2 persons, and so it's restrictive in that regard. So you have some leeway in that regard, but if they're not contiguous, you know, I mean, most people who are going to build it generally build as big as one of the residents indicated, as big as they can, because you know, the more space, if you can afford it, you build it as big as you're allowed under the code to build it, has been my experience. And with the greatest amount of privacy that you can grant to the occupants.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
What is the procedure in case, you know, let's just say, you know, you recommended that 1,000 feet is more acceptable. If somebody came forward and said, you know, I've got, you know, both, I got my in-laws and my parents, and, you know, and I need more room than 1,000, what's the procedure?
Could they go to the Board of Zoning Appeals or not?
They could, but they wouldn't be granted I don't think
It's
that's
not a
a
hardship
self-imposed
or anything.
hardship, yeah. You'd have to amend the code.
Yeah.
As a practical matter.
You know, we have found more and more that these are living codes, and more that you relate to, you respond to reasonable requests as the culture changes.
Anybody else? I guess I have a thought. I would support the increase to 1,000. It would probably be hard to persuade me to go to the 1,200 square feet. I mean, one of the things is a bit ironic. It's beside the point, but a couple of years ago, the town amended our zoning code. You can build a single-family residence in any residential zoning district as small as 1,200 square feet. I mean, that used to be incremented for larger lot size. I don't remember. I mean, I think we were up to 2,000 or over 2,000 square feet, so we shrunk all the back. I didn't personally support that, but it's the reality of what it is. So, yeah, these things are fluid. They're flexible. They change. What about anybody else? Thoughts? I mean, maybe real quick, anybody jump in? 800, 1,000, 1,200 thoughts?
I can support 1,000, but not, I agree, not 1,200.
Yeah, I think 1,000 is pretty reasonable.
Who else? Who wants to jump in?
I can go up to 1,000 also.
Okay. Anybody else?
I can agree on 1,000.
Okay. Seems to kind of be a consensus. Let's leave that one aside just for the moment, and maybe if we get to that, Sean, you can even help us identify for sure which section that is, if we're gonna make a modification to that. Other comments in general about this, we won't belabor this. If the Plan Commission, Town Board are prepared to act, we can put a motion in place. Is there any other discussion about any other issues that pertain to this? I guess procedurally, if you're prepared to move ahead, I think maybe the cleanest way to do this would be a motion to repeal and recreate all those lengthy sections that I read in with the agenda item related to conditional uses and permitted uses, and to see if we can get a second for that part of it, and then probably a motion to amend that motion with regard to the square footage for the in-law suite, or I suppose you could put that into the main motion either way. It's up to the prerogative of the motion maker, right? I mean, it could either be addressed separately, or you can make it an integral part of it. Does that make any sense to anybody? Who wants the motion? Yeah, I guess we need to do this probably at the Plan Commission level first then, if we're prepared to act.
I propose.
Go ahead.
Motion to adopt, with the one change to, from 800 feet to 1,000?
Correct.
A recommendation to the
I
town board, they
recommend that.
adopt it, yep, with that change.
Okay, I think that's pretty clear. We're not gonna go back through all the numbers again. Is that okay?
No, please, no.
All right, please, no. All right. Is there a second to the
I
motion?
second the motion.
Okay, and does everybody on the Plan Commission will act first? Does everybody understand the motion? It's to adopt this, repeal and recreate. We're gonna adopt this, and then with the change from 800 to 1,000 square feet for the in-law suite. Everybody clear on that? Okay, any further discussion? All right, then we will proceed to vote. All members of the Plan Commission in favor, and keep saying aye. Aye. Opposed? I've got that passing 6-0, so then the baton gets passed to the town board. Your pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we accept the recommendation of the Plan Commission
Okay.
on the text amendments, including the 800 to 1,000 square feet addition for the in-law suites.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Radke, seconded by Supervisor German. I don't think I need to restate that. Everybody's clear on what we're voting on? All right, then all members of the town board in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously 5-0. I'm gonna suggest we're gonna move momentarily here to the continuation of the public hearing, but before that, I think we'll take a 5-minute comfort break. We will resume promptly at 8:15, and we're adjourning momentarily at 8:10.
Can't rely on opinion anymore, we have to have evidence.
Can't rely on opinion, if that's just how you feel?
No, right, they put it right in the law, they put it right in the law.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, you
No, I had it up, I think I still have it up, I think I made it clear, I don't like the law.
Yeah.
Substantial evidence means facts and information other than merely personal preferences or speculation directly pertaining to the requirements, conditions the applicants must meet. So that means personal opinion.
Can't I still state personal opinions as long as I don't act on it?
Right. Oh, sure.
Then it's okay.
Oh, sure. You could say, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't vote for this in a million years, but
Okay,
under the
that's
new
what I
law, those damn legislators, I have plan commissioners saying that all the time, Kathy.
Folks, we're going to resume here in about a minute. Okay, we'll continue with item 12. Hearing notice is hereby given that the Town of Waukesha Plan Commission will hold a second public hearing on the 9th day of January 2020 at 6:30 PM at Town Hall, W250 S3567 Center Road. Such hearing shall be for the purpose of considering the adoption of a project plan for a tax incremental finance district in accordance with Wisconsin statutes 66.1105. 3 bullets underneath that part of the agenda. The first part will be a review of TIF project planned by Christy DeMaster, our consultant from Trilogy. Then we'll open the public hearing, and we will either continue it or close it. After we proceed with that, I'm going to make just a real quick comment here, and Christy has a very fine presentation for us, but just a little bit of background for people. Again, this is the second public hearing. The first public hearing on this spanned over 2 meetings or 2 months, and she's got a timeline on that she'll share with you. The reason or reasons that we are having a second public hearing tonight are threefold. One, and not in any particular order, but one is that the city of Waukesha requested another public hearing. So we are complying with their request in that regard, accommodating them. The second item is that we have made some changes to the plan, which Christy will identify. And the third thing is because there's some misinformation out there about the first plan. Misinformation, misrepresentation. It'll be an opportunity to clean some of that up. I've described that in kind words as discussion creep. There's been a bit of discussion creep, so we're going to try to clean that up. And she's going to reinforce those points when she goes to her presentation. So, Christy, take it away, please.
Thank you. Bear with me. I'll try not to get too long-winded, but as Brian indicated, there have been some changes and there have been some things out there that need to be addressed. So I just want to walk through that with you so everybody's on the same page as far as that goes. So as Brian mentioned, there was a public hearing on the draft project plan back in October. And then there were some things that came to light later that were going on at the same time that I did just want to mention. We learned in mid-December that the mayor of the city of Waukesha had sent a letter to the other representatives of the Joint Review Board, the body that has to ultimately approve this, the school district, the county, and WCTC, but not to the town, raising some objections to the proposed TID. The school district finance and facilities committee discussed this project plan at their November 11th meeting. We later learned that the mayor was also at that meeting and that they had a copy of his letter in their packet, and so there were some things in there that need to be responded to and addressed. The continuation of the public hearing was held on November 14th by the Plan Commission. There was a representative of the city who spoke and offered a lot of comments on the plan at that point in time. The plan was revised with a date of November 25th to address the portions of those comments that were appropriate to be addressed in the project plan. So that revised project plan was reviewed by the town Plan Commission again on November 26th, at which time it was recommended to the town board. I did contact the Department of Revenue and spoke with Kristen Filipiak about the process at that point in time, whether there needed to be another public hearing. She said no, there did not. The Plan Commission and the Town Board could make changes to the plan after the public hearing. That's just kind of an aside note. The town was invited to the school district's Facilities and Finance Committee meeting for their December 9th meeting, so I was able to attend that along with Attorney Macy. On December 10th, the town, as well as the other members of the Joint Review Board, did receive another letter from the mayor of Waukesha requesting that the Joint Review Board require the town to hold another public hearing on this matter since some changes were made to the project plan. On December 12th, the town board did have their meeting and adopt the project plan, the November 25th version, and establish the district boundaries at that point. Sometime probably early to mid-December, there was another round of comments that were put together by the city. Those were provided again to WCTC, the school board, and Waukesha County, but not any town representatives on the Joint Review Board. The Joint Review Board held a meeting on December 19th to consider the plan. They did not take a vote on the plan at that time. That's when we learned that there were these additional comments out there from the city on the revised plan. Subsequent to that, I've been working with town staff, town attorney, or, throughout this process, town engineer, town planner, to put together some responses to the various comments, questions, misrepresentations, misconceptions, I guess you would say, that have been raised about this issue. And in the course of doing that, I noticed some errors that were made on my part in the November 25th plan that needed to be corrected. So that's the December 26th plan that you have in front of you. The concept hasn't changed. There's just some things that need to be cleaned up. Again, I did contact the Department of Revenue about that as soon as I realized that. She said it's not uncommon for there to be things that they catch when they're doing their review after everything's all approved, and then usually it's just a case of sending it back to the community, make the corrections, and then they don't have to go through any resolution or public hearing or anything. She said in this case, since it did impact the numbers and since it was caught before the Joint Review Board acted on it, that it would be appropriate to have a new resolution by the town board. Again, not a public hearing required, but to adopt a new resolution adopting the revised plan. So that is where we are at today. I just want to walk through, again, the changes that have been made along the way, just to make sure everybody's on the same page with what those are. So this is the proposed location of TID number 1, again, along Sunset Drive, Prairie Avenue, and Industrial Lane. This map shows the zoning that's in place currently. So the pink is commercial, B1, I believe. The purple is industrial, and then the yellow is residentially zoned properties. And this shows the proposed boundaries. There have been no changes in the proposed boundaries in any of the versions of the plan that you've seen to date. This map shows the proposed uses for the district. The crosshatched pink is mixed use. The purple, again, is industrial, and the yellow is residential. The October draft of the plan showed those residential properties along Sunset Drive as mixed use to allow greater flexibility for what could be done there. One of the things that occurred after that draft was put together is that the city exercised extraterritorial zoning for this and a couple of other areas in the town, and put in place an interim zoning ordinance that freezes zoning within this area for a period of 2 years. And raise objections generally to those properties being converted from a residential to a business type use. So that was addressed in the November 25th draft to keep the proposed use for those properties residential. And the concept there is that those could be redeveloped as senior housing, which is a conditional use in the R3 zoning, correct? Just, elbow me if I say anything incorrect. There was no change made to the proposed uses in the December 26th draft that you have before you tonight. Again, there was some comments raised by the city with regards to Industrial Lane and its place within this project plan. One of those issues was confusion, I guess, about what the intent was with Industrial Lane. So the November 25th draft added some language and another appendix with the detailed cost for Industrial Lane, just to make sure that it was very clear that the plan is to widen it, not just to reconstruct. And the city also objected to use of TID funds for this project in general. And so in the November 25th draft, the costs are still included, but they're not partially funded by TID in that draft. They were treated as non-project costs that would be funded outside of the TID by the town in support of improvements in this area, but not as with TID funds, which also frees up more of the funding within the TID plan to be used as direct development incentives. And then, again, with regards to the numbers, in the November 25th draft, again, there seemed to be maybe some misconception that there was a statement made, I believe, that all of the properties within the proposed district were currently being used as they are zoned, and that is not correct. There are quite a few, I should say, not quite a few, but there are some residential properties that are in areas zoned for business right now, so they are non-conforming uses. So I reorganized the list of existing properties in Table 1 of the project plan to group them by zoning at that point, just to make sure it was very clear how the properties were zoned, and then that table also lists how they are currently being used. Again, along with that, put in different development projections for those residential properties along Sunset to reflect senior housing for those properties to be consistent with that proposed use. And then while making these changes, I noted some additional properties that could be potential sites for improvement or redevelopment, commercial properties along Sunset Drive. And so I added those into the projected increment for the plan. Which brings me to the December 26th revisions, and I have quite a bit of detail in the plan if you look at it as far as all of the existing properties and uses and values and acreage and so on in Table 1. And the projected and current values in Table 2 are linked in my spreadsheets to Table 1. So I had a couple of things that I had to clean up there with some properties that were not included in their existing property value was not included on Table 2. So the result of that was it overstated the amount of projected property value increment and also the amount of funds that would be available for development incentives. And then the other thing is, as I said, have been working with town staff and other consultants to address concerns about whether this development would occur but for TIF assistance. And that's not required to be stated in the project plan, but I thought that it would be appropriate, as long as we were addressing some other things, to incorporate more of that information that I had provided in separate documents and just put it straight into the project plan itself. So with that, I just want to walk briefly through the numbers and what they look like in the current version versus the previous draft. So right now, and again, the concept has not changed at all as this has moved along. It's just the numbers changed a little bit here. So the current draft shows 1.8 million available for development incentives. The previous one that you had back in November showed 2.3 million. And that's, as a result of having less value increment than we had shown in that November 25th draft. So we're looking at an increase in property value projected for this area of 13.1 million. That was about 16.3 million in the November draft. Again, that would bring down the projected tax increment revenue somewhat. And so this plan, or the plan is for the district to close out in 2038. So between now and 2038, currently the projection is about 1.8 million of total tax incremental revenue for this district. And again, that the cash flow hasn't changed in concept. It's just that the numbers are a little bit smaller in terms of cash coming in and cash going out for the district. But again, the concept still is that this would be done on a pay-as-you-go basis. So there's no borrowing up front by the town. It's just as property values increase and there's revenue available, and if you have a developer agreement in place, then that would allow for some incentive payments back to the developer. Then I wanted to get into addressing some of the other comments and questions, and I, have been responding to things as they come up and trying to provide some answers, but I do want to provide a little bit more information than maybe you've seen so far on a couple of these points. And so these have to relate to sanitary sewer and water service. What is the impact of this extraterritorial zoning, and why do we believe that that is not an obstacle? How stormwater drainage would be managed, and then just generally this but-for question. And Storage Master has been raised as an example of, well, there's development that's occurring already without TIF assistance. So I did want to address that as well. Lots and lots of words here. Brought this up before, but I did want to actually share some of the actual language from this agreement. I don't know that everybody on the board has, or in the Plan Commission has read this agreement. There is a 1988 agreement between the town and the city for water and sewer service for this Sunset Drive Island area. Section D of that agreement says, it is agreed that sanitary sewer service will be provided by the city to the property owners within the town whose property abuts the right-of-way of the following described streets, which includes all the streets in this area. Section D2, it says, the parties agree that a substantial part of the consideration for this contract, as far as the town is concerned, is the agreement by the city and its water utility to provide sanitary sewer service and water service to the town residents as provided in this contract without the requirement of annexation to the city. The city agrees to provide sanitary sewer service to the abutting property owners on the streets herein described in accordance with the terms of this contract. The city further agrees that such sanitary sewer service will be provided without the requirement that any such property owners agree to annex their property to the city. So that has been in place for a long time. There's no limits in that contract as far as no reference to change of use, no reference to limits on the amount of water or sewer service that would be provided. And if the town administrator has compiled a list of all the properties and when they received sewer service going back to the date of this agreement, and there have been new properties being connected all along during that time period or receiving a change in use. The most recent one was Storage Master in 2017. And then finally, the city has clearly planned for this area in both its wastewater treatment plant facility plan. They actually call it the Clean Water Plant. And also in their application for diversion of Great Lakes water from Lake Michigan, and have excess ample capacity under both that agreement and also within their Clean Water Plant. This shows the area that is sewered within the town of Waukesha. So you can see that Sunset Drive Island area is, all the properties in red have sewer service currently, but the whole area is covered by this agreement. And then that red square to the south is the town hall property. That's covered actually under a separate agreement, and that agreement does mention use, that it's limited to use as town hall in order to receive sewer service. But there's not a similar provision in the other agreement. And then this map, again, it's a little harder to see, but this is the map from Waukesha's Lake Michigan water diversion. And all of the area in dark blue is area that is currently served with water service. And then the areas in light blue are within the water service agreement, but don't currently have service. So it's a little hard to see, but a lot of the properties within, let's say, the majority of this area has water service currently. Getting into a little bit of legal territory here. So John, if I'm misstating anything, please help me out here. But the extraterritorial zoning is another issue that's been raised to argue that the town cannot move forward with the plan at this time. The city imposed an interim zoning ordinance, as I mentioned earlier, and the claim by the city is that this freezes both zoning and uses. And that issue was the subject of a court decision back in 1979 in Town of Grand Chute versus City of Appleton. Just a couple of relevant sentences from that Court of Appeal decision says, the sole issue on appeal is whether a city's interim extraterritorial zoning ordinance can restrict the land uses within the zoned area to the more restrictive of the actual uses or the zoning in effect when the ordinance is adopted. Appleton argues that it should be allowed to preserve an existing use if it is more restrictive than the zoning. The trial court correctly determined that Appleton's position had no support in the legislative history. If there is zoning, which in this case there is, section 62.237A(b) allows interim zoning freezes, and if not, it allows interim use freezes. It does not allow the city to freeze the more restrictive of the zoning or uses. And so that means that if there's zoning in place and something can be done, as my understanding, that if something is allowed under the current zoning, that would be there could be a change of use potentially. So, and I just want to point out too that this TIF project plan does not rely on any rezoning of any of the properties as it was amended back in November. I'm not an engineer also, so if Chris needs to jump in here on any of this too, he's been looking at the drainage issues based on statements from the city that they would not accept any stormwater runoff from anything in this area. Currently, I understand there's storm sewer in Sunset Drive, and then Industrial Lane has some ditches that drain south into town storm sewer and then into the city. Again, Chris could talk more in detail about this, but there are, needless to say, very strict requirements in place now that weren't when these properties were originally developed for managing both the rate of stormwater runoff and the total amount. But there are also a number of options that can be used to address those. And I guess most recently with Storage Master, again, this was an issue for them, and it was handled with some underground storage. No, don't see any significant obstacles that wouldn't normally be in place for any development that would occur. I'm getting to the end here. Just want to address this kind of but-for tests and that whole question. It's kind of been simultaneously said, well, there's no potential for this area because all of the lots have existing buildings on them. And then also at the same time saying, well, that's not any obstacle for redevelopment because, you know, it happened. It's been happening already, so on and so forth. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. And I will say, if you look at a lot of project plans, there'll be kind of a generic statement in there that says something along the lines of, well, this development would not occur at this location but for TIF assistance because it's more costly to develop on an existing site, developed site versus locating in a greenfield site. That's a pretty generic statement. It may or may not be true. I mean, you see plenty of TIF districts that go in for greenfield sites because of the cost of public infrastructure to get to those sites. But I think it's important to look at the context of the area and the specific situation of the area. So I wanted to address that a little bit. Within this proposed TIF district, the conditions amongst properties do vary quite a bit. The property values are generally pretty low if you look at how they compare to other more recent developments in this corridor. There are some non-conforming residential uses. There are some residential properties that are really becoming incompatible with being on Sunset Drive directly across from commercial uses. There's been some piecemeal conversion of residential to business, some narrow lots, some small lots. And historically, looking generally in this corridor, development that has occurred has either been on vacant lots or it's been supported by TIF assistance. Within this specific site, you've had, since 2000, Abra Auto and Midwest Plumbing developed on 2 vacant lots. You had the redevelopment of Storage Master property in 2017 and some facade improvements to Bliffert Lumber property. I don't want to get into too much on this, but just point out that the Storage Master property that was redeveloped in 2017 is really kind of an unusual site within this area, just because of the size and the width of the lot and the fact that there was relatively not a lot on the site before it was redeveloped and the property value was very low. So there's really not any more sites within the district that are similar to that currently. And then just a little bit about the property values and kind of related to the potential for this area, you know, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but the residential properties right now average about $321,000 per acre in terms of value. The industrial are about $341,000 per acre average. The one on the far right end here, this is Midwest Plumbing. This is the one in there, that area that's more similar to other industrial park areas in the nearby vicinity. The commercial does vary quite a bit. Again, the newer developments are valued at higher per acre, generally speaking, but it's still, the average is fairly low compared to other newer developments nearby, and so I've pulled up a couple of these examples of this within that immediate vicinity in that area. So looking at this district in as a whole, we think, you know, there's both potential there, but also it, given the history and the conditions of things right now, that there will be need for TIF assistance and would not, that these things would not happen but for TIF. And then one last thing I just wanted to, yeah, I've gone through this with everybody before, but again, every project that comes forward would have to separately meet that but-for test and would also have to show that the increase in property value will be enough to support the requested assistance. And that's all I have.
Okay, thanks. Great presentation. I'm going to just ask one thing here. I'm wondering if Engineer Janelli, Chris, I mean, you recently drafted a letter form report addressing issues or concerns about storm water control and management in that industrial lane area. I don't know whether you've got a copy of that handy, but have it committed to memory. I wonder if we could dive just a little bit deeper into that in as much as that issue had been raised, and can you kind of paraphrase through that or what or not, and tell us what you've written. You spent some time with that at our request. Would you do that, please?
Certainly. I think one of the questions was about stormwater and how it might be handled, and I feel like that's a trick question because stormwater is generally really site by site specific.
I wasn't trying to trick you.
Yeah. Right. In general, stormwater on Industrial Drive drains south through the ditches. Almost all of the town properties, almost all of each of those properties drains to industrial and to the street. That runoff flows south in the roadside ditch, gets picked up in a small segment of town storm sewer, which is connected directly to the city's storm sewer currently. I'm not aware of any stormwater problems in the area. And I think how stormwater would eventually get handled is, like I said, on a site-by-site basis. There's probably two aspects to this stormwater question. One being the road reconstruction. Current rules would likely require the town to implement some sort of stormwater improvements for the road, just because it's wider, more impervious surface and that sort of thing. That would typically get handled like small rain gardens in the ditches or something like that. For each property, the storage master is a great example with underground detention. There's obviously other examples of having different types of detention or infiltration basins, bioretention, that sort of thing. The size of those facilities likely, obviously, will depend based on the site, but most of the existing land use out there is pretty well heavily developed already and impervious surface with rooftops and parking lots. So the goal here being to kind of detain the difference between what gets developed and what doesn't. You know, change in impervious between existing and proposed. It's possible that with trying to meet current zoning codes and different things like that with redevelopment sites that there might actually be a reduction of impervious surface on some of these sites. So it's also possible, and I kind of think unlikely, that a regional kind of stormwater approach could be done. I think that would probably require cooperation of many of the property owners in that instance. But I think irregardless of whether that happens or doesn't, I don't see stormwater being a huge hurdle for the redevelopment of any of these properties.
Okay, thank you very much for summarizing your letter form report. We'll then continue with the public hearing at this point in time and open it up to comments first from those who are in the audience. If you would like to speak, please come to the microphone. Again, give us your name and address. Get up close and personal to that microphone and share with us what you have to say, please.
Good evening. Jennifer Andrews with the City of Waukesha. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Waukesha. And I'm here tonight to read you prepared comments on behalf of the City of Waukesha. These comments, some comments regarding this project plan were made previously and remain applicable to this version of the plan, but I'm not going to be reiterating those here. And we do again ask that these comments be made part of the public record for the creation of this district. After reading the project plan, examining the physical area, and reviewing the regulations and agreements currently in place, the City of Waukesha still believes it's premature to approve TID number 1. There are areas that stand out as either deficiencies in the plan or as conditions that make the plan infeasible. In addition, the town has made a written statement to its constituents that the creation of this TID is being done as a step to incorporation. This seriously calls into question the sincerity of this plan and whether any parts of this plan would be implemented. In addition to the true intent of the town, the following facts remain as a barrier to approving TID number 1 in the city's opinion. The town does not control zoning within the proposed boundaries, and therefore development cannot occur as stated. Present uses are frozen under extraterritorial zoning. No change in use can be made. In addition to that, conditional uses and variances and zoning changes must come to the city for approval. The town has not insured utilities to new and expanded facilities, and the but-for test has not been met. There are 2 significant impediments to implementing the project plan for TID number 1 as proposed. The first is the lack of zoning control for the properties within the boundaries of TID number 1. City of Waukesha, as you know, enacted extraterritorial zoning, and that zoning freezes the zoning in the area and current uses until there is an agreement between the city and the town on these matters, or there is the expiration of the jurisdiction. Furthermore, all conditional uses and variances must be approved by the City of Waukesha. The town's project plan relies on changes in uses on properties and conditional uses in the district to realize the investment and redevelopment it's projecting. This cannot occur even if the proposed use is in the permitted uses in the town zoning code until the city and town have reached an agreement on zoning. The statute permits a 2-year time frame in which that can happen, so it is premature to approve the TID until some agreement has been reached between the town and the city regarding zoning. The plan states that it's consistent with the town's comprehensive plan in terms of land use. The town has modified its comprehensive plan recently to accommodate the uses it calls for in the district. However, those modifications to its comp plan and the TIF plan are still inconsistent with the county's comprehensive plan, which will halt any rezoning or land use changes which might be needed. The second impediment to implementing the project plan is that the town cannot ensure utilities service to any new or expanded facilities, and therefore does not meet the state statute. The city, as I've stated before and will continue to state on behalf of the city, will provide no water or sewer service to new users or increased or upsized facilities. The 1988 agreement was made to address the needs of existing land uses at that time, regardless of the service provided in the past or the capacity of the city's treatment plant. The city asserts that it has met its obligation under this agreement and will not provide new or upsized expanded service to any parcel in the town of Waukesha. The town disagrees with this reading of the agreement, and therefore the 2 entities are at an impasse. The city will not permit any connections to its storm sewer service. In addition, the city will not accept additional stormwater runoff from any new impervious surfaces. Owners of properties that are increasing their impervious surface will have to retain their storm sewer or stormwater, which was just discussed. And the city has extensively studied its stormwater runoff citywide and invested millions of dollars in a storm sewer system to eliminate flooding, and those studies did not take into account any additional runoff from the town of Waukesha. The plan makes assertions that can be misleading. Its comparisons to the development in the city's TIDS 12, which is the industrial park on the bypass, and TID 14, which is the shops at Fox River, are not legitimate. The conditions, sizes of development, etc. are completely different as addressed in detail in the city's earlier comments regarding this project plan. There is a statement on page 6 that equalized property values for the residential properties declined significantly after 2008 and have only partially rebounded. This does not appear to be the case, and I've provided charts in this handout that show you some total equalized values in various years for the properties highlighted on a map, the residential properties along Sunset Drive. You can see that there is a dip following the 2008 recession, and that can be seen that the 2019 equalized values, currently those values exceed the 2008 values, and there was a steady increase after the initial fall in value. And you can also see that the trends in property values between the city and the town are similar to each other on these similar properties. All versions of the project plan offer different land uses and values for the lands to be developed. It's hard to understand exactly what the town's plan is for this area. Which properties are you including as properties that will be redeveloped? Why do the acreages keep changing? Why do the values change? The amount of development incentives has also changed in each version of this project plan. The first incentive amount was a little over $1 million. The second version, it was $2.3 million. And the third, this final version, is a little over $1.8 million in incentives. It appears there's not a clear plan for development, therefore creating a TIF and freezing tax revenue is premature when there isn't a clear development plan and timeline for the district. After a careful review of the project plan, the only conclusion to be drawn is that it's premature to approve TID number 1. As the city stated in previous comments, it is our opinion that the town has not provided convincing evidence that the but-for test required by the statute has been met, and there does not appear to be a clear development plan or timeline for the district. The city has stated publicly several times that it does not intend to extend sewer, water, or storm water services to this area if those services do not already exist or if those services need to be expanded. The town cannot ensure utility services for new developments in the TID as required by the statute. The town does not have zoning authority currently to implement the plan as proposed. There may be a time in the future when this TID is warranted and it is more appropriate to approve and it can meet the state statute, but that is not at this time. In addition, the town's own written statements call into question the sincerity in which they are putting forward this plan. It appears that this may be a misuse of the tax incremental financing tool provided by the state and that the town is only creating this district to incorporate, not to drive investment into the district. Thank you for your attention, and again, we'd appreciate these comments added to the public record.
Thank you. Question, please? Question, please? We may have several questions. The top of page 2, when you talk about impediments to implementing the project plan and talk about the town's inability to ensure utility service, the rather short sentence buried in the middle of that says, the 1988 agreement was made to address the needs of the existing land uses at the time. Can you direct us to the specific verbiage in the agreement that says that in so many words?
I'm not going to comment further on that.
So the answer is no.
No, I'm not prepared to comment further on that agreement. If your council would like to contact our council, we could have a discussion
Is
about
that your statement then, or who's making that
I'm
statement?
not authorized to make any more statements than what was made here.
So you didn't prepare this?
I did prepare this, and it was reviewed by our city attorney, and I'm not authorized to make any additional statements.
Okay.
So it is your position the city attorney reviewed this draft?
They did.
Did you have discussions with them, as the slide indicated, as to the Supreme Court case that's totally contrary to what you stated here today?
Sir, the city attorney approved this draft, and I've read our
I asked you a specific
comments.
question as to whether or not you and he discussed that issue, because your statement, you've made this statement.
Mr. Chairman, his microphone, please.
You've made the statement. My question to you is, did you discuss with the city attorney that your statement is contrary to the state law?
And I'm not going to discuss what our internal discussions were between myself and my counsel.
So you're not going to state whether or not you've deliberately misstated the law?
I am not going to talk about the internal discussions between myself and the council.
So you feel you can stand up here, read a statement, even if it's totally untrue, and not respond to any of the questions?
This is a hearing to hear from the public. We have provided our comment as
Wait,
part of the
public
public.
hearings, you can ask the people who've made comments all the time questions on the basis for their comments. Happens all the time.
As I stated, the city of Waukesha believes that it has met its obligation according to the 1988 agreement, as I stated in the document.
So last year, when you hooked up Storage Master, that was it. You don't have to do anything else. We want to know what your basis is.
And certainly, if you would like to address that further, we can invite our council and we can meet about that.
This is the public hearing.
Yes,
You've
and
made statements. Your statements need to be, you have to give some basis for your statement. You just can't stand up and make representations and not document what those are based on.
I believe your residents are able to stand up and make comments and not have to justify their position. I'm giving you our statements as according to the city of Waukesha and our position in terms of the agreement.
Let me ask a slightly different question. I understand it may be your city attorney's opinion that the 1988 agreement was made to address the needs of the existing land uses at the time in terms of municipal sewer and water service. My question is a little bit different. I think in the past, representation has been made that the pipes aren't big enough, and I'm making that a bit simplistic, that the water pipes and the sewer pipes aren't big enough. Is that still the city's position, that the pipes aren't big enough?
I'm not stating that's our position. I
Okay,
believe
well,
in my statement I said that regardless of capacity.
Okay, do you have any engineering information from the water utility, public works department, or whatever that you can represent to us tonight that the pipes are too small?
I'm not going to comment on that because I have no information specifically regarding pipe size, but our statement is that regardless of capacity, we will not be providing additional service.
Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Does the city stipulate that since 1988, they have granted water service to new users?
We have granted new service, yes.
Okay.
Same question with regard to sewer service?
Yes.
Okay.
So then why the change in policy?
And certainly, as I stated before, if this board would like to conference with the city of Waukesha to discuss the agreement, we'd be more than open to that. But all I'm authorized to say tonight is that we will no longer provide additional service or expanded service.
For whatever reason, you've changed your policy. Okay.
More than that, they're violating the agreement. Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? Please come forward.
Sandy Hom, West 230, South 3827 Milky Way Road. I know why they changed the agreement, because they want to continue to annex. My only question on this item, and everyone knows that I'm in favor of the TIF-TID, is that on the section of the packet that dealt with this item, I think it was page 21, there's an appendix 1 that's blank, and I'm interested in knowing what would have been on that appendix, and that's the opinion of the attorney. At least online it's blank. I don't know if you guys have that letter or not.
The answer
Yes,
is
it's on.
we've got the letter, but it isn't integrated into the packet. Is that the fair answer?
So it wasn't
Yes,
online
that's
for
correct.
anyone to read in advance? That's a problem for me, because I read it. So can you read it? So we know what it says?
Can you do that, John?
Try to pull it up.
Give him a minute to find it, okay?
Sure.
Unless Chrissy's got it right in front of her. Or Kathy.
Or Christie, whoever can find it first, can
I
read.
did not print that out, and it's gonna be faster for John to find it on his laptop than me to pull mine out, so.
Sounds like it's coming back.
Got to just find a.
Well, he's searching for a minute. Do you have any other
No, it's
comments on
just hard to
district
prepare for a
efficiency?
meeting when
Well, I
the
understand.
documents aren't there.
I
So,
understand.
thank you.
Yeah, we'll hang on for a minute till he finds it.
Kathy, you don't have a date, do you?
We'll give it a little bit of time. If they can find it, we'll do it right away. If not, we'll move on to another speaker and circle back. So we'll hang in there for a bit. Please.
Yeah, I found it, I believe.
Okay. When do you want to just go grab Kathy, please, for a minute? Okay, Attorney Macy's found the letter. Why don't you just, it's not real long. Can you give us the date and read it in its entirety, please?
January 6, 2020, Town of Waukesha. It's addressed to the Town Board of the Town of Waukesha on Center Road. Ray, the Town of Waukesha, TID number 1, Project Plan Approval, Opinion Letter. Dear gentlemen, Section 66.1105, Parent 4, Parent F of the Wisconsin statutes requires that a project plan for a tax incremental financing district include an opinion by the town attorney with regard to whether the plan is complete and complies with Section 66.1105, period. As town attorney for the Town of Waukesha, I have been asked to review the above referenced project plan for compliance with the applicable statutory requirements. Based upon my review, in my opinion, the project plan dated November 25th, 2019 for the tax incremental project plan, Town of Waukesha, is complete and complies with the provisions of Section 66.1105 of the Wisconsin statutes. Please note that my opinion in this regard relies on the project plan prepared by Trilogy Consulting dated December 26, 2019, and as presented, I have relied on the statements of facts set forth therein, the documents attached as exhibits thereto, without independent verification. I have been engaged or undertaken to verify the reasonableness or accuracy of the assumptions, estimates, or financial projections contained in the project plan and express my opinion relating thereto, or no opinion relating thereto. It being my understanding the town is relying on the advice of its financial advisors with regard to the same. Similarly, the project plan contemplates that all of the requisite notices have been given, but have not independently confirmed the PAT. In accordance with Section 66.1105, Parent 4, Parent F stats, a copy of this opinion letter should be included in the project plan. Please contact me with any questions you may have. Thank you for the opportunity to be assistance at the Town of Waukesha in this regard, dated by myself and copying the town chairman and the town clerk treasurer.
We apologize for that oversight. We'll see that it gets integrated into the document, okay? Who else would like to speak? Please come forward. Name, address, and close to the microphone, please.
Betsy Novak, S44W25357, Red Oak Drive. I am for the TID district. I believe that it is in the best interest of our town. And I sit and listen to the attorney, or whoever she was from Waukesha, accuse us of having a motive. She kept stating that. But I would like to know, what is the city's motive? Why doesn't the city want us to do this? And everybody knows what that motive is. The city is under intense pressure to increase its tax base. And where's it going to get the land? Where's it going to get more taxes? It's going to get it from us. It's going to start to annex everything we have, and it's going to become a greedy monster to take everything we have. This is about government versus taxpayers. I am a taxpayer. We all pay our taxes. We choose to live in the town, which is low tax. We don't live in a city. We don't want to live in the city. We want our town. We don't want you to take it. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. And they know by stringing us along that they can take more and more and more of our town. And if we let them do that and we say, oh, you know what, you're right, we're just going to draw this out, then we're going to miss every single deadline we have to make us a village, to protect our borders, to protect our taxpayers. I find it so disingenuous that, number one, they accuse us of what they're doing. I also find it disingenuous that they have gone behind our backs to other boards to give them letters that they did not give to us.
Just address us, okay?
All right, I'm just angry at them for coming into here and thinking that they can do this over and over again, accuse us of being disingenuous, not doing things the way we're supposed to, and that's exactly what they are doing. I don't appreciate it, and I don't know anybody here that would appreciate it. And as a taxpayer, I want to protect my interest, not the city's interest, and I want our town to remain as it is, whether it is the village, because that's exactly what it will remain. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Al. Who else would like to speak? Name, address, close to the microphone, please.
Mike Borchard, West 231, South 5205, Hunters Hollow. Just to add to what the lady was saying here about the city annexing property. There was 5 acres of undeveloped property that was in the town, right off of Harris Highland and St. Paul, and that was just annexed into the city. Request went in on October 1st and was completed by the end of the year. So I don't know if anybody else knows about it. So there's 5 acres of undeveloped land. Town had it, and it could have been developed. But the owners, who I know who they are, I won't mention their names, annexed into the city. So this is what we're trying to stop. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? If there are no more comments from the audience, then we'll turn that over to the members of the Plan Commission and the Town Board for comment or question.
Just a comment or question. So the city asked for this public hearing, and there was an offer that because of their difference of opinion, that their attorney could meet with ours. I think we should set something up, get the record straight.
Okay, thank you. Who else would like to comment or question?
Mr. Chairman, as
Yes,
you know, you and I are both members of the Joint Review Board, and in the last several weeks, we have met with different entities that are represented on the Joint Review Board surrounding the school district and others. And my comments that I've made in public have been consistent that the town does not deny that this TIF is beneficial in many, many ways. But the most important aspect of this TIF is that the merits of it stand alone are beneficial to the town, they're beneficial to the school district, they're beneficial to the Waukesha County, and they're beneficial to the Waukesha School District because of increased tax revenue. The fact that there's other benefits to the town shouldn't preclude people from making the decision based on the merits of the project plan and the merits of the project plan alone. You and I have discussed that at length, and I know that you're of the same opinion that we need to focus on the merits of the TIF. And the reality is that the merits of this TIF as a standalone TIF, other issues aside, make it a good project.
Thank you. Who else? I guess I'll just echo that sentiment. I've said it in public, and I'll say it again when it comes to this. The same words you used, this proposal needs to be evaluated on the merits, and the politics need to be left at the door. Who else would like to comment or question?
I'm going to just say one thing. I think that it's pretty much given here that the town is pretty unified in adopting this. We've heard from citizens, and I think all of us are on board with this, so I think it's a good thing. I think Mike said it very well. You said it also with leaving the politics at the door, and I think that's where it should be.
Okay, who else? Go ahead, Commissioner White.
I would just like to give you my comment. I'm also in favor of this, and I think maybe we should have a roll call or let everybody see if we're 100% on board with this TIF project. So,
You want to just go around the room? No, we understand they don't vote, but I mean, you can
I
simply.
just want to ask for opinion.
You can
from
simply
everybody.
indicate if you're completely supportive of the project. There's nothing wrong with that. Go ahead.
I would vote yes if we would have the option for this TIF district, and I'd just like to see if everybody else on the planning commission and the supervisors in the town of Waukesha are on board. See if we're all in compliant or 100% on this. That's all I'm asking.
I'm on board, 100%.
I would approve it, yes.
I would also approve it.
Yes.
Yes.
Hands down, yes.
I am.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? One more chance to the audience. Give us your name once more. We know you, but please.
Betsy Novak, S44W25357, Red Oak Drive. With what Supervisor Mr. Radke said, why isn't their attorney here now? This is the meeting for that. Why are we going to drag this on to another meeting? They're going to have their attorney. They're going to go behind our backs. And I understand what you're saying. You want to give them a chance. This was their chance. Where is he? Why didn't he come? Why didn't he address these questions that we all have? We're just going to drag this on. It's suddenly going to be the time when we have to. They're still going to throw up roadblocks. Doesn't matter what we do. Doesn't matter how many times they come. Doesn't matter how many times we meet. They're going to do the exact same thing. I really don't see what's going to make a difference by meeting with their attorney, honestly. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if there are no further public comments, if there are, there is another public comment. We know you, but we need your name and again,
Betty
your address.
Paget, South 57 West 22641, Woodside Court. The city asked for this public meeting. The young lady came, she read from a script. She gave no answers to anything else, merely read from a script. You can take the script however you prefer. She had plenty of time to write it. She had plenty of time to review it. And she said what she wanted to say. You may have questions. I don't think we need to keep dragging this out. I think we need to somehow quickly make a decision, because we've been at this for several months. And each time they want another public hearing, and she comes and makes another public statement, answers no questions, and just makes a statement. I too am just making a statement, but I'm making the statement that I think we've had enough time. And the board seems to agree that they are ready. They've had enough time. I don't think we're ready to vote on it tonight, but we need to be voting very soon. And that's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you. If no one else desires to speak, we'll kind of do as we did before. I'll give anybody about 5 seconds here to express a desire to continue with this public hearing. If I don't hear anything from the Plan Commission or the Town Board, I'm going to declare the hearing closed. Okay, this public hearing is closed. Thank you for all who participated. Item 13, I don't know unless someone takes exception, it's necessary to read these into the record here, but items 13 and 14 that pertain to MC Home Builders, they have asked to be pulled from the agenda tonight. They're not present, so we need to honor that request. Perhaps it's best that we simply ask for someone to table that. Do we have any idea when they would like to reappear, or do we know?
They gave us an extension, so.
Gave us an extension,
Yep.
so not a date definitive?
date.
Do you have a suggestion as to what the motion to table should be? Should that be to a particular date?
There was no public hearing, required on this, or no notice
I'm sorry, I didn't say
given, so-
public hearing. It's agenda
No,
item.
no, I'm saying that.
Yeah, fair enough.
So there, we don't have to go to a specific time and date. Sean will watch the timeline and the extension given and bring it back in a timely manner to deny it or to act on it so that we don't lose our rights.
Okay, so should we take formal action to table these items in the absence and at the request of the petitioner? Would that be appropriate?
Yes.
Okay, then we probably ought to, let's do it formally. Item 13, then a plan commission action. The motion would be to table at the request of, in the absence of petitioner. Is someone from the plan commission ready to make that motion?
I so move.
Okay, and is there a second?
I second that
Okay,
motion.
Commissioner Fuller, Commissioner Sisney, everybody understands the motion. So plan commission members voting, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
That passed unanimously. Same question there, possible motion to the town board. Is there a motion to table this matter at the request of the petitioner in the absence of petitioner?
I'll make a motion, it gets tabled.
Second?
Second.
Supervisor Radke and Supervisor Durr, everybody understands the motion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And let's do the same thing then with item four.
Mr. Chair, I would like to, for the record, that I recuse myself, because I had to recuse myself when we originally did this, so I think just for sake of.
Okay,
sake of
well, I guess not,
continuity.
not too late, we'll put that in there, you
Okay, thank
recuse.
you.
All right, or abstain. All right, item 14 then, proceeds, we need to do the same thing quickly, plan commission, there's a motion to table that item in the absence of the petitioner and at the petitioner's request. I'll make that motion for the plan commission, is there a second?
I'll second.
Chairman Fisher, Commissioner Fuller, everybody on the plan commission understands the motion, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye, opposed? That passed unanimously. And then to the,
I'll make a motion to table that item as well,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
a second,
Second.
we'll give that to whoever you want to give it to. And presumably Supervisor Stigler, you want to recuse yourself or abstain from that as well. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye, opposed? And then I'll just ask for abstentions. Why don't you just indicate you abstain? Okay, good enough. We're done with that. Item 15, discussion possible action on the site plan / plan of operation SPPO for petitioner R.G. Keller, agent for Waukesha Storage LLC located at W 271S 2885 Merrill Hills Road, tax key 132-499-1001. This will be discussion by the Plan Commission and the Town Board, possible action by the Plan Commission, possible action by the Town Board, and I presume, Planner Malarkey, you're gonna walk us through this?
Correct.
I see the petitioners there. We'll give you a chance to self-introduce and engage in discussion momentarily, okay? Go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a 10.17 acre property along Merrill Hills Road. As you know, with the bypass, Merrill Hills Road will be cul-de-sac, and so this would access off of the new cul-de-sac on the road itself. What they're requesting is a site plan of operation amendment. They want to expand the existing storage business, Waukesha Storage, with a new 15,500 square foot building, which is going to replace the existing building on the site. If you look overhead, this is the building that's going to be removed and replaced with a new building. The new building includes a 24 foot by 40 foot office area and 30 storage units. They're accessible from both the outside and an interior corridor. The existing fencing that exists on the site is going to be maintained as part of the improvements. This last time the site plan of operation was amended was in 2004 to add additional storage buildings and landscaping. The proposed new storage building, which you can see overhead, and office use, meets the requirements of the B3 General Business District in terms of setbacks, offsets, height requirements, and lot coverage requirements as well. They have provided a plan of operation The uses and activities for the site would be self-storage units and the rental office with limited outdoor storage of boats, RVs, trailers, et cetera, as previously approved in the rear. I do know Attorney Macy had a comment on that one to be potentially tightened up going forward. Number of employees would be 2, no company vehicles. Hours of operation will be from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday for the office. And then 24-hour access to the storage units via card code through the gate, which is currently the way the site operates now. In terms of building architecture, let me get to that. Somewhere. These are the architectural drawings. The west elevation is the elevation that basically faces Merrill Hills Road. That's the office portion that's extruded there, and sort of the higher portion, and then the rest, the storage units, trail behind it. We do have architectural requirements in our site plan of operation section of the ordinance, which requires building exteriors facing a street or approved way would have 50% of the street face constructed with brick, decorative masonry, glass panel, or other appropriate similar finished facade as may be approved by the Plan Commission and the Town Board. Such brick, masonry, glass, or other decorative fencing or facing shall extend for a distance of at least 25 feet along the sides of the structure from the street. And so what we have here essentially is there's decorative masonry along the bottom of the building, so the base of the building, and there's about 40% of the front of the building are glass panels. The rest of the building is comprised of horizontal metal siding. For the office, the storage portion of the building that extends to the back is vertical metal siding with that same concrete base. And so if you add the base materials with the glass, you're at about 46% of the facade being glass and a decorative masonry. So it's a little bit short of standard finished materials that are typically proposed. I guess we can let the applicant explain what the difference might be between the horizontal metal siding and then the vertical siding for the rest of the building, if it's a finished material that you might approve for the particular building. The storage part of the building that's set back about 24 feet from the face of the building doesn't necessarily meet that requirement. And then the returns on the building where it wraps around, the materials are supposed to be on the front of the building and then wrap around the side of the building for a distance of 25 feet. That's about 24 feet, so it's very close, but not quite there. No overhead doors are facing the street, but the Plan Commission should determine if the proposed architecture and materials are appropriate. In terms of landscaping, I'll go back to the site plan here quickly. Most of the site is impervious surface, so it's almost all paved or buildings except for areas that are set aside for stormwater management. The improvements to the site are actually going to slightly increase the pervious surface, so there'll be a little more infiltration here, and so there aren't a lot of areas to landscape the site. We require landscaping around the perimeter of new buildings, around street frontages, and then around parking areas, and so basically the entire of the storage building is doors, is overhead doors, so you can't really landscape the perimeter of that. You can do some frontage landscaping in front of the building and then some landscaping associated with the parking. I will say that the requirements for building foundation planting, if you limit it to the space that's surrounding the office use, the width of the street frontage, and then the paved areas, they have provided more landscaping than would be required if you focus on those particular areas, not including the rest of the building that's essentially all doors and needs to have access. So I think the Plan Commission should also determine whether or not the landscaping as proposed meets the intent of the ordinance and is acceptable. Exterior lighting, they are proposing 6 LED wall lightings around the side of the building and then one 12-foot high pole-mounted LED light in front of the the entrance where the parking spaces are proposed. All lights will be dark sky compliant with full cutoff shielding, and then the proposed lighting levels that they have shown do meet the requirements of our ordinance. We have no specific requirements for parking for mini storage units. They have provided 3 spaces in the front and a couple of spaces in the back. We know there's going to be 2 office employees here. There might be some visitors to the office, and the remainder of the people that actually accesses their storage units would park in front of their units. They have shown signage as part of this on the architectural elevations. I should show you the colored version of this, so you can kind of get a sense of how the materials differ from the office portion of the building to the storage portion of the building. So they are showing a wall sign as part of this. We don't really have specifics for that sign at this time, and so that they'd actually have to fill out and complete a complete sign application to be approved by the town board for that sign moving forward. So any approvals tonight would not include approval of the signage. In terms of stormwater management, Waukesha County has stated that they will not require a full stormwater management permit. It'd be subject to a minor erosion control permit for land disturbance for under 1 acre, because the site's always been planned to be totally impervious, and they've accommodated that through the existing stormwater management. Chris, do you have anything to add?
I do. I actually have a letter with 3 comments. One of them Sean just mentioned. The stormwater issue, the county will be still requiring an erosion control permit. One of the concerns I had that I was not aware of until recently, I knew that there was a stormwater management plan on the site, but I didn't know if that had a recorded stormwater maintenance agreement associated with it. The county emailed me recently that agreement actually is in place and is recorded, so my comment too is kind of null and void. And then my only other comment is I see that the plan calls for relocating the existing holding tank and well, and approval from Waukesha County must be obtained for that, and I suggest a copy be provided to the town. And that is all I have.
Okay, petitioner, you want to come up, introduce yourselves, please, and if you could certainly share with us anything that you have to add to the presentations you've heard from our staff.
Good evening. R.G. Keller from Keller Architectural Design, and with me is Jeff Panosian, who's the owner of the development. What we're trying to do here is actually put a new front door on this facility, and obviously when Merrill Hills Road went through, it's a whole different deal now. It can be seen from the bypass but not accessed, so we needed to create some sort of an element on front that was recognizable. The architecture is a little different in that there's a pre-engineered building company that builds all the storage units. The front office piece is a conventionally built building, and those 2 are attached. So they kind of come from different spaces or different locations, but attached to make from color and detail and so forth to look like one development. We are curiously increasing the green space on the site, which is always a good thing. But the nature of storage buildings now is that you really want to greet your customers without having them go through the security of the gate. So we are keeping the gate in place, but actually pulling the parking outside the gate so that someone can come and visit the office, make the transaction for developing an agreement for the storage unit of their liking, and then being able to leave without actually going through the security of the gate. So anybody who does have storage within the building basically punches in a code, the gate opens, they go into their unit, store or retrieve what they need, come out the gate through a card reader, and so the entire site is secured 24/7. But again, the intent is to try to create a new image for the development, which, you know, storage buildings aren't the prettiest thing in the world, a lot of overhead doors and so forth, but this basically creates a new front door for this development that didn't have. Should also mention that there's a 6,000 square foot building that's being removed for this to happen. So we are eliminating one of the buildings on the site by creating this development. So, any other questions I can ask? Any planning commissioners have any other questions?
I have one, but I'll hold for a minute. Questions from planning commissioners, members of the town board, comments?
I guess my question's always, and we had this in the past, is the front facade, is it gonna meet the masonry requirements, sir, that we always normally have, or are we just looking at straight metal in the front and glass? Or can we do both, I guess?
There's a masonry band down below, but if you need additional square footage, we can certainly add that.
I was gonna say, how high is that masonry?
3 feet, typically. Just, it's created just to keep, you know, the damage from lawnmowers and snow plows and that sort of thing from damaging the building because it's metal. But
Okay, what is our requirement? Is it 2 feet or, I can't remember now.
I think Sean's gonna respond.
2 feet?
Two-
The masonry?
No, well, we have a requirement of 50% of the facade constructed of brick, masonry, glass panel, or other appropriate similar finished facade as may be approved. So it mentions masonry and glass, but the Plan Commission has some discretion in terms of what you consider an appropriate finished material.
We're at 40 as opposed to 50, we're at 40.
You're about 46 with the glass and the masonry on the bottom.
we can find a way to get the other 4% in there if that's a issue.
Okay. Go ahead.
What about the wraparound? You weren't quite able to achieve the 50%? You were at 40, I believe?
Well, with the wraparound, the issue with the wraparound is we require 25 feet wraparound of the same materials, right? The same 50% materials, and they have, because the building is only 24 feet deep, that office building, they're not quite there on that, so,
Okay.
you know.
I mean,
Oh, that's why it wasn't wrapped around. Okay.
Worst case, we can make.
Well, they do,
it
I mean, they do
foot
wrap
deep.
the materials around, you can see the materials are wrapped around the side of the office, but it only goes 24 feet deep versus 25 feet deep.
Basically, that part of the building isn't big enough to meet our requirement.
Correct, right.
I mean,
It's close.
We could make the building 25 feet deep
Okay.
and, you know, meet the requirement if that's a major stumbling block.
I have one question, Mr. Keller, you probably know the answer to it, I don't, but the building is 15,500 square feet?
Yes.
Give or take, not sprinklered, I quite assume?
It is not, but it does have a firewall down the center.
Okay,
And
so.
I did talk with the building inspector, and based on other facilities, in an area that really doesn't have domestic water, that was allowed to have, to divide the building down into 2 component areas.
So you
That's
won't
okay.
exceed any allowable square footage of area?
And
Okay,
his
so you got that
requirement
under
was a
control.
2-hour wall, which, you know, pretty simple to do, this kind of
Okay,
building.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Other questions, or what are you thinking? I mean, Sean kind of put some things out there for us to discuss. I mean, let's maybe first focus on the architectural part of it, the building materials, the percentages, the wraparound or that type of thing. Thoughts on that? Is this close enough to meet the intent of our ordinance, or are we going to require literal compliance? Thoughts on that?
I do have a question, maybe before you get into the discussion. Could you tell me more about the horizontal metal siding? Is that just the same as the vertical metal siding but turned sideways, or is it a different product?
It's a little different product because of the way it's mounted horizontally. Typically, and again, 2 different components are coming together to make this building. The pre-engineered metal building people are developing all the storage units, kind of what they do. And so that then is married up to the office structure, which is 24 by 40, something like that. We were looking for, the horizontal metal we felt was a little more attractive than the vertical metal, so it didn't look like a tin can. And so what people see is the front piece, and so that metal is, it costs more, it looks a little nicer, and it's detailed differently than the rest of the building. And we can run that back a little bit further, but understand that you try to deal with a pre-engineered metal building company, that's not in their standard, scope of services to provide that. So we're creating a stick-built building against a pre-engineered building, trying to blend those 2 together with color and material. So it is more expensive, it's a little different than the rest of the building.
What is the surrounding material on the high windows?
Just brake metal. The
Okay.
intent is, if you're familiar with the U-Haul facility on 164 and Arcadian, which was a former grocery store, they've actually knocked out the wall up above the entry and put in basically glass panels. And then they put in an image of the storage units up above and
I
lit.
see.
And so this is something similar, not wanting to use the same kind of orange that is used by U-Haul, but the similar kind of thing. It states kind of as a billboard that this is what we do. We store stuff for people that have too much stuff. And we're really happy to take your stuff.
All right, so that's not glass then?
It is glass. It is glass.
Okay.
With a image of storage units
I
behind it.
understand, okay. And is that, the brake metal then, does that project
projects,
beyond the
yes, it
plane of
does.
the building?
Yes,
How
it
much, give or take?
A foot.
Okay,
Again, it's intended to create a little different image, create a shadow line.
I understand.
Something interesting as you drive by.
okay, all right. So kind of back to the basic question, let's stay with the architectural part of it. Again, the thoughts on, is this close enough to comply with the intent of our ordinance?
I have to word it a little bit different, Mr. Chairman.
Do it.
You have to say whether or not it meets the requirements of the ordinance, although it doesn't meet the percentage. I think the planner stated it accurately. Obviously, from a legal standpoint, I'd prefer that they meet the 50%, but otherwise you have to say why you think it, at not 50%, it still meets the intent of the ordinance. Did I state that correctly, Sean?
Yeah, there's also another provision in the site plan of operation that allows the plan commission to modify the principles and standards for unique and special situations. So there's also that.
Can you give us, if we're going to put this in motion, do you know specifically what that ordinance provision is or numbering or anything?
Yeah, it's section 42-30A2.
42-30A2?
Yeah.
Correct. Hey, can you just read, I know you paraphrased, can you just read it to us what that
Sure.
says?
Modifications to the principles and standards may be permitted as determined appropriate by the plan commission and the town board in response to unusual, unique, or existing site conditions that impede full compliance, provided such modifications are otherwise consistent with the purpose and intent of this chapter of promoting health, safety, general welfare of the citizens by preserving and enhancing the town's natural environment, facilitating the creation of an attractive and harmonious community, protecting and enhancing property values, and encouraging the appropriate use and orderly development of land.
So Attorney Macy, if the plan commission found it fit, could they rely upon that 42-30-A2?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, from my point of view, the way that I can be comfortable with the wraparound is on most commercial buildings that we deal with, the side of the building is substantially more than 25 feet. And we're trying to create a look from the road that is attractive, and so that's why we require the 25 feet. In this case, this section of the building is 100% covered with the wraparound. It's just that it so happens that the building is only 24 feet deep. I would probably feel differently if the building was 12 feet deep.
Okay.
Or if it was 18 feet deep even, but it's a foot short. And I can't imagine that an additional foot of that building that we're looking at would make a visual difference to people who are in the area.
So for you, bottom line is close enough?
Close enough, and for that specific reason.
I understand. Okay. Anybody else?
I'm inclined to agree with that. We did make, a previous petitioner a couple months ago revise their facade to meet the requirements. I think it would be fair maybe to meet the masonry requirement on the front, maybe bump up the 3 feet a little bit, but the wraparound.
That's fine.
I don't see a point in increasing the size of the building to meet the requirement there.
Do we know, I mean, if that were raised from 3 feet to 4 feet, do we get to the 50% or close to it? Does anybody know?
I think it wouldn't take much to meet the 50% either glass or decorative masonry.
I might suggest we put a panel that's larger than just the belt line somewhere, just so we
Okay.
get to the 50%.
And that would wrap around as well.
As long as you allow us some discretion on how to get there, we can certainly submit it back for your review at a staff level or something like that.
Would, Commissioner Fuller, would that meet the intent of your concern?
We had a masonry component, right?
Right, yeah.
He's just indicated that instead of making the lower one wider, they might make a decorative band somewhere else, Is that did
Oh.
I
Yeah,
understand
in
you
other words,
correctly?
if we have the ability to select how we go from 46 to 50%, whatever that dimension is, we'll find a way to make sure it's there and everybody note where it is.
Sure,
And then the question would be, if you're comfortable with that, would we leave that to the discretion of the petitioner as to how to get there, rather than coming back to us for our concurrence? Can we leave that to their discretion or not?
With a review of the planner, I'd prefer.
Fair enough, but not back to a formal board meeting? No. Are other people comfortable with that or not?
I am.
Yes.
Okay, so just to summarize a bit on the architectural stuff. We think we're okay with the 24-foot wraparound. We want to get to the 50%. You can come up with a creative idea to how to do that with masonry, and leave that to the incredible wisdom and good taste of our planner, and we'll be there. Is that it?
We'll have to combine our incredibly good taste and see what happens.
I'll bet you can do it. Okay. Let's go to do we need to air that anymore? Then we need to go to the landscaping, and Sean, we've just refocused it. I put a note on there. We need to find out whether what they're proposing to do complies with the intent of the ordinance. Can you just double back on that real quickly?
Yeah, they can't strictly meet the ordinance because of the doors in the building, the fact that the whole site's already basically impervious surface. So they basically have to comply with street frontage requirements and building foundation requirements for the office portion of the building, because that's really all they can plant. There's already a landscape buffer along the south edge of the property that provides screening there. So if you just look at the places where they actually can put landscaping around the building itself, and you take the street frontage width, they're already exceeding what's typically required for landscape material. So I'm just asking the Plan Commission, with the fact known in mind, they can't strictly meet the requirements, have what they provided. Is that adequate?
Okay, and I'll just put it just a little simple, different ways so we can move along. Is there anybody who is uncomfortable with or don't believe the intent of the ordinance has been complied with, given the kind of unique circumstances of what this building is? Is there anybody who's uncomfortable with that? Okay. All right, and I put the note on there that anything clearly needs to be noted that signage approval needs to be taken up at some other point in time. What other things does the Plan Commission or the Town Board need to discuss or resolve?
The one thing that Attorney Macy raised was the way the uses and activities are described in the plan of operation. That says self-storage units and rental office. So it's describing the use, self-storage units and a rental office with outdoor storage of boats, RVs, trailers, et cetera, in the rear of buildings. And so the old plan of operation, I don't know if it had a specific location, because I know there's currently things stored out in front of the building. And so the way the layout of the property works now, based on the location of the new building and the entrance, there's no place to store any of those materials, the boats and RVs, et cetera. Now, by default, they need to be stored in the back at some point. So that's how I've stated that, but I don't know if we want to tune that up a little bit more.
If I might add, one of the curious notions behind this building is it's got deeper storage units, so you can put RVs or long boats and that sort of thing. Right now, there's 5 or 6 surface spots for large RVs out in front. That'll go away. There's some open yard in the far rear of the site that has open storage, but everything else is enclosed. There's some large storage buildings for large RVs and so forth. So the whole notion is to take some of those vehicles that are kind of, we'll call them messy looking in front, because they're just parked there, and get them out of the way and clean it up with new landscaping, a new building, and so forth. So this building really is focusing on the people that need wider and deeper storage, which isn't really provided in too many areas in the town or even in the city.
My concern, Mr. Planner, was with the word et cetera. I know you can't describe everything, but I've had to, go in and try to clean up sites, and they say, what do you mean? You didn't
That's
limit
et
what I
cetera.
could, you didn't limit what I could
Right.
say, allow, what I could rent
Okay.
that space out for.
Or what?
So that's,
So-
I
so
just
would-
want to bring it to your attention.
So would the applicant be okay with boats, RVs, and trailers? Is that the limit of everything?
say something like it's gotta be on wheels? I mean, I don't, so I don't store, yes,
So we're only talking about outdoor, we're only talking about outdoor storage, yeah, just outdoor.
outdoor storage, right,
Yes.
just outdoor, right.
But what about cars? I mean, don't you ever have cars there?
Right, so cars.
So vehicles.
Snowmobile trailers,
You said boats, RVs, or trailers.
I know, I'm asking them.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
is
okay.
vehicles.
yeah, right, that's, all that's back there. But, yeah, so I guess if we say boats, RVs, trailers, yeah, I think that we are 100%.
And not vehicles, not other
No,
vehicles?
no, you gotta, yeah, so people
Okay.
do store cars. Back,
So boats, RVs, trailers, and other vehicles.
yes.
Do you require them to be operable?
Yes, gotta be operable, gotta have,
Okay.
current registration.
Operable and licensed vehicles.
I just don't, you know, if somebody buys an old vehicle, they're gonna rebuild it someday, they put it on the trailer and they ask you to, you know, for $200 a month, can I park it there? And we just wanna define, I think we can agree that you want this also, so you can say, no, you can't put your trailer with
Yes,
your car.
I agree with you 100%.
It works both ways.
I need good credit risk, I don't need, yes, we're okay.
Thank you.
I'm okay with what you're saying.
Well, I guess I want to ask a question about vehicles. Are we gonna, do you do semi-trucks and gravel trucks and all those kind of
No,
things?
no,
I mean,
I
are we gonna, when we say vehicles, are we gonna limit it to that or not?
So I do RVs, big RVs.
That I get, and that's, we're talking consumer products here, basically, uses, not commercial.
Well, no, there's like some guys that store, plow trucks.
Then I guess maybe we better get a little more specific then, if we're gonna say that, I don't know.
We use the microphone.
Yeah, we could do it by the number, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. That's a good idea.
I mean, I was just wondering if the quad axle, that's a big truck. And if we're talking specificity here, then I think that we.
You could limit it
perhaps-
to, I think, 3 axles. I think, the biggest stuff out there, doesn't have more than 3 axles. I don't know, I mean, I don't wanna tell you how to.
No, I mean, that's a good point.
That's the problem with when you start down this road, but as long as he's willing to, you know,
To limit it in some way.
it's operable and, you know,
And so
smaller
do
than
we-
3 axles or number of tons, you know. I mean, my point wasn't, I don't care if cement trucks are there or quad axles are there. I just wanna know what, if somebody complains, what was legal and what wasn't legal. So I'm not making a policy decision on what you should allow or not. I just want it defined.
Now, is everything that is stored outside is stored on a hard surface?
No. Well, when you say hard surface, so gravel, in the back is gravel surface, and impervious surface, but it's gravel.
Okay.
If
How
you
much
look,
of it-
if you look at the back of the site here, this is gravel.
Yeah, but that's a perfect example of, so pretty much what you've got there are like travel trailers, is pretty, you know, some boats you can see, that's some cars. That's a perfect example of what's out there. So it is a hard, I guess you know, like an engineer probably would consider it a hard surface, I think.
But nothing's parked in the grassy areas at all? You don't there's no overflow into the grassy?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, everything's, okay.
So do we want to limit it to operable vehicles with current registration, not to exceed 3 axles, boats, RVs, and trailers?
Sure.
Another view.
Well, not other vehicles in excess of 3 axles.
Right.
Okay, I get the gist of it.
So I hate to split hairs, but if the vehicle's on a trailer, does it have to be licensed and operable?
You know,
This is
I'd
what we
say
get
yes,
into.
I don't wanna store, yes, yeah,
Okay.
sure, I'm no
As long
problem
as
with
you're
that.
comfortable with it, I'm
Yeah,
comfortable with it.
I don't want any, yes.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I don't think we're trying to tell you how to run your business, but when we're gonna put this down in your site of operation, and somebody else comes in and complains because we have a semi parked there, well, that's not in your site of operation. If
Right,
you're
and
gonna do
that's
that,
right.
say so now, and not down
Right.
the road and we get in
Right.
trouble.
I don't want to get too restrictive, you know, next thing I get myself in a box, but in general, I want to, anything that, I want people with super good credit risk, you know, so people who own a nice big trailer, a nice big motorhome, I know they're going to pay their bills. Somebody who's rebuilding a car, like a 16-year-old kid, it's not a good, just ends up to be problems. I don't know if that helps at all or not, but,
Yeah, we can't do much about that. but-
yeah.
Well, Sean, I'm gonna be funny here now. There's 2 axles on the trailer and 2 axles on the car.
How about each piece? Each piece cannot exceed 3.
Okay, this is abundantly clear to everybody, right?
So my conditions here then, we've clarified that condition. That's one of the conditions in my recommendation. There's 15 total conditions. The only one we need to add, if the Plan Commission chooses to approve this, we only need to add the one for materials, so that the front facade is brought up to 50% finished materials to be approved by the town planner.
Okay, are we then prepared?
Do you have a copy of the staff report? Okay, I can quickly go through them. One is that the existing plan of operation remains in new effect, except as modified by the new permit. It's limited to Jeff Panosian doing business as Waukesha Storage LLC on that particular property. No other use by any other entity is permitted. The plan of operation, which we've already talked about, the uses and the storage of the vehicles, number of employees are 2, no company vehicles, hours of operation. For the office, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday, 24-hour access to the storage units via code card through the gate. The site plan of operation approval is subject to the petitioner complying at all times with the plans and documents presented tonight. The petitioner shall satisfy all comments, conditions, and concerns of the Plan Commission Board, Engineer, and Planner for all plans that have been submitted. Does not include approval of any signage. You have to come back for signage. The plan of operation shall prohibit outdoor storage of any materials or equipment aside from those that were approved through the use, like the RVs, boats, trailers, etc. It shall not be in full force into effect until such time you get full approvals from Waukesha County for stormwater management and maintenance agreement if necessary, and for erosion control. And the rest are just standard conditions for building inspection, fire inspection, reimbursement, etc.
Okay, unless there's anything further, a motion would be in order to approve the site plan of operation for Waukesha Storage LLC. This would be an action by the Plan Commission, and it would be for approval with the conditions that have been noted.
Mr. Chairman, I would make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I can second that.
Supervisor Stigler, Commissioner White, everyone on the Plan Commission understand the motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Then passed unanimously, and the town board, are you ready to accept that recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that the town board accept the recommendation of the Plan Commission.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Supervisor Stigler, Supervisor German, everybody understands the motion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We are at the point where adjournment of the Plan Commission at 9:52 would be in order. Is there a motion to adjourn? All right, Commissioner Fuller, is there a second, the motion to adjourn, Plan Commission?
I second it.
We better do it, Mrs. Piala's leaving, all right? Seconded by Mrs. Sisney. You know, you don't get paid if you leave early, even though this is your first meeting. All right, all in favor of adjourning the Plan Commission meeting, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we indeed are adjourned, thank you. All right, 5-minute, real quick comfort break, 5 minutes, and we're back at it.
See you in March.
Yeah.
see you. Good for you. Have fun.
Thanks. Anyway, no, if I was up there, I see brand.
Well, they did have a little bit of thing in there, but they didn't get, usually they do bring samples. And they have there.
And the thing is, I don't understand going from horizontal to vertical, because they like the horizontal front. There's some great products in there that carry right through there. Much better.
Yeah, I think they wanted to kick off that office space, versus, so it was a separate, and then.
Or keep it all vertical, the same around. But the fact that there's only a little, I can show you some stuff. I mean, there's a little area on the door, that's perfect. Outside your capacity, but in your. Carry right through the.
My warning was more careful to give them the ammunition to suit the town. And so when you make your deliveries, you have a very, very complicated. Because they don't want the judge to say, well, you decided.
I've not done this before.
All right, folks, if you want to grab your seats, we're going to resume here. Time marches on. We're going to continue with the town board meeting here at 9:58 p.m. First item of business on the town board meeting, 17A, is discussion and possible action on resolution 2020-R-01, a resolution adopting the project plan for tax incremental district number 1 and creating tax incremental district number 1 of the town of Waukesha, Waukesha County, Wisconsin. Is there a motion for action? Or discussion? We do, if you're inclined to do that.
I will make that motion. To
Yep,
adopt the resolution.
To adopt
for
the
tax incremental
resolution.
financing.
Your motion is to adopt resolution 2020-R-01. Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, the motion by Supervisor Stigler, second by Supervisor German. Is there discussion? Okay, then I'll assume you're prepared to vote. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes 5-0. We'll move on to Item B, 17B, discussion possible action on a review of the operator license for Dustin Davis, DAVIS, working at Tally's Tap and Eatery, Inc. And our agenda says no new record found. Kathy, can you enlighten us on that, please?
We did a check of his background, another background check, and he has had no new incidents. You had asked him to, his operator's license to only be valid until this meeting, so then we could review if he had any other incidents. He has not.
So what's appropriate at this time, just automatically approve it for good, or, yeah, I would make that motion.
Okay. To, just a regular license. So that-
Exactly,
yep.
yes.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Stigler, second by Supervisor Radke. Everybody understand the motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. 17C, discussion possible action on carryover vacation time for employees. We may have a general discussion on that, and I think this is prompted by a specific request from you, Kathy. You want to take it away?
Yes, I have, as you know, I work through the holidays. I've got 64.55 hours to carry forward.
Okay, I have, I guess, two comments about that, and I know you alerted us to that when you were heading into the holiday season. I've got two things we can answer them in any way. I think I asked in some of the communication, do we not have a policy? I mean, we've got a town employee policy manual or what or not. Do we have a policy about carryover time for carryover vacation time?
It has to be approved, I believe. I'd have to look at the manual. We've done it in the past.
Okay, I'll just make one other comment. We do that going forward, and this is not just for you, but for other people as well. I mean, if you look in most policy manuals and that type of thing, there is encouragement, there's soft words in there, but encouragement for people to take their vacation time to recharge their batteries and that type of thing. I think we need to, going forward, we need to encourage that to people to take their vacation time. It's there for a purpose rather than just stacking it up.
Absolutely. And normally on a two election year, I don't have a problem. It's just that I was doing the incorporation work for the last 6-8 months. And so I did not have a chance to take the vacation that I was hoping.
How much vacation time do you have in addition to that in beginning the new year for 2020?
3 weeks.
And is it 3 weeks? Is it just vacation time, or is it 3 weeks of vacation time, sick time, personal time?
It's 3 weeks of vacation time.
Okay, and is there something in there about personal time or sick time?
I do not have personal time. Everyone gets 40 hours of sick time. And I
Okay.
did not use my sick time either.
Okay.
But we don't carry over sick time.
Did you find something, Mike?
I thought there was more on it than this, and I'm just doing a search, I'm not reading the whole thing. It comes up under compensation time, and it just says no carryover compensation time is allowed, and that's not what we're talking about. In case you're wondering, elected officials don't get vacation time.
Really? Well, I mean, we'll move on and address this some other tonight, but I mean, I think that needs to be put on the schedule going forward. I mean, we need to have a policy for that so we don't encounter this and cross the path in the future. I know at one point in time, and I don't know if there was a formal policy time, but even with like DPW people, we didn't want them to stack up a whole bunch of vacation time for December or whatever, that type of thing. If we need them to plow snow or that type of thing, that ends up being problematic. What's the pleasure of the board?
My question, I mean, what are we asking? You got
Yeah,
some?
it's carried, not carry, that's why I missed it. Unused vacation time may not be carried over from one year to the next unless approved by the town board. The town reserves the right to deny vacation requests when adequate coverage is not available or when workload is unusually high.
Okay.
So it is part of our policy to approve it. It is part of our policy to grant it upon request.
So I'm asking you to approve 64.55 hours of my vacation time.
Oh, possible action. I'd make a motion to approve the carryover in that amount.
I'll second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to approve the request for Kathy Nicholas to carry over. Is it 64.55 hours of vacation time?
Correct.
Further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Can we get, going forward into this year, can we get an accounting, a regular accounting of your time so we know where we're headed? Is that a reasonable request? Yeah, periodically, how much vacation time you've got, when you've used it. I think we need to do that. I mean, town residents, I mean, some people expressing concern, candidly, that, I mean, you don't work on Fridays and stuff. I mean, I think we need to know whether those are vacation days or whatever they are. I think we
No,
need to
I work
be
over
clear.
40 hours a week without Friday. So coming in today, I've already worked, at the beginning of today, I've already worked 86 hours, so.
Yeah.
Do you punch a clock when you come and go?
I do.
Okay. So we could pull time reports.
Absolutely.
Are we gonna look for a vacation report from all department heads?
I think that'd be a good idea. What do you think?
We're gonna do it for one, we should do it for all.
I agree. I think that would be appropriate so we know where we're at.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, discussion pertaining to reports from Weed Commissioner, Wisconsin Stats 66.0517. Kathy and Mike and I had some discussion about some of this back on the 18th of December. I decided that it would be advisable to put this on the agenda to try to clean some stuff up, and I know you put a number of references to town ordinances on there, Kathy. Do you want to dive into this one?
When we were discussing, we talked about what a public official was, and so I looked in our code and found our code states that a public official is any person serving in statutory elected or appointed offices provided for in the stats 60, and all members appointed to boards, committees, and commission established or appointed by the chairperson, or the town board pursuant to code, whether they are paid or not, and that's whether, not cold or hot. Then 2.54.
Well, let's just stay there for a minute, and I know you, when we met on the 18th of December, you offered the opinion that the weed commissioner was not an official, and I understand, I mean, you corrected, you've changed your mind on that?
Right, what I said was he was not at the same, what I meant to say when I was saying official, I was thinking a department head. So when you asked me to grab some code, I went into the code and found it. He is not a department head. He is a public official because he is appointed by the board.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, he's appointed by the chairman.
Okay, continue.
2.54, order of business. Number 8, reports from officials of the town.
And
2.54.
Hold a minute, the relevance of that to the discussion is what?
Well, you asked me to find some, the request was that the weed commissioner wanted to do an oral report like the rest of the department heads. So I was giving you some code to look at.
Okay, and you thought per 2-54, and I don't know whether it was oral or not, but you thought per 2-54, which is order of business, that he could not make a report to the town board. Is that true?
I very well told you that you could make whatever decision you wanted to. During that meeting, I was very specific.
Okay.
You could make the decision on if he was gonna do a report or not. That was not up to me.
Okay, next one.
2.54C2, addressing town board. At a meeting at the town board, no person other than members of the board shall address the town board or any other member of the town board. This provision shall not apply to the clerk treasurer, the county sheriff, any member of the town board, and the town engineer, town attorney, and town building inspector. And as you pointed out, the town planner is not included.
Well, the town planner, the town administrator, the town fire chief, I mean, if we take that literally, none of those people could address the town board.
Correct. So if you, since we, maybe in the future you'd like to revisit this part of the code and either strike it or add the rest of your officials.
Okay. So the bottom line, where we're at, and I guess, Mike, you can come up and speak if you want. I mean, I had suggested, and we can go at it different ways, you do make written reports from time to time, that I thought it might be prudent to simply include that in the once-a-month list of reports, and it could be included therein, and if there's nothing to report, there can be no report.
Well, I just wanted to get the board informed of what was going on out there. I'm in the 8th month of my 3rd term as a weed commissioner. I appreciate that. There's been a lot of good things done. This year, starting June, and June, July, August, September, October, I submitted a written report based on what was going on with the written complaints and the progress with them. I submitted those to Kathy Nicholas. She included some portions of it in her report. My original suggestion was just to include a written copy of my report in the packets. And then the discussion came up of giving the report orally also. And there's been some issues that I think the town board should be aware of. And that was my only goal there, just to keep everybody informed of what was happening. That's it. Any questions?
What you're saying, Mike, is you want to give a written report in our packet, and that's pretty much it, unless
Well, that was my original,
Well, I mean, what do you want going forward here, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, it's-
Is that sufficient enough to get a written report from you? And if there's some question on the board, we can ask them? I mean,
yeah,
is that
and
fine?
that's fine.
I mean, we don't need a report every month, obviously, I mean, but
Well-
especially this time of year, obviously, there's no weeds.
No,
growing,
I
but-
understand that. And there was, I can do it written, and then if you want to read them and you have any questions, that's fine. But there was one issue that went on for months, and it involves annexation of town property into the city, and there was a lot of things involved there, and the board wasn't aware of it. And that's, to my knowledge, you weren't.
That you can say.
Okay, to my knowledge.
Well, I wasn't aware of
Okay.
it.
Well, I think it'd make, I mean, we gotta look at going forward here. I think it makes some sense if you're gonna go to the effort and stuff to make those written reports, to simply include them in the packet. I mean, those are once a month. If you don't have a report, there isn't, but simply put it in there. If there are questions about that, they can be followed up on. Does anybody object to
No, that's fine.
including his reports there?
I'm fine with that.
That's
Okay,
fine. I
so-
just wanna let the board know what's going on.
Yeah.
And one of the things that has come, good things that come out of it, there's been vacant properties that were not part of a subdivision, and when these people decided or found out they gotta start cutting this all the time and keep it cut, Well, they had enough of it. They sold the property to somebody. There was a house built on it, and now the town's got more revenue. Okay, so there's been 3 of those for sure. 2 more properties have got for sale signs on them, and potential buyers, so.
All right, so going forward, when you submit written reports, they'll get put in the packet. Simply put a thing that's called reports from the weed commissioner. If he's here and everybody wants to ask a question, fine. If he's not, at least we'll have a written report. Everybody okay with that? I don't think we need to take formal action on it. All right, item 17E then, discussion and possible action to clarify the action taken on 12/2019 concerning the administrator position. I have a motion to offer at this time to see if we can clarify where we're at. And my motion is as follows. I move to affirm the intention of the town board to continue to employ Kathy Nicholas as the administrator of the town of Waukesha, serving at the pleasure of the town board pursuant to Wisconsin Stats 60.373A. Compensation for her employment will continue at $600 per month, and I so move. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, discussion. Or Kathy, if you want to comment, it's open for discussion. Any discussion?
So this is the same motion basically from December 12th. Now we're just not tying it to a term?
Right, as I recollect my motion from December 12th, it was to extend her administrator contract under the same salary to terminate at the same time as her current clerk administrator contract. That's how I recall it. I didn't
Right.
go back and review the video.
I think that's the essence of it, and it did not pass. So yes, this is serving at the pleasure of the town board,
Okay.
not a fixed contract or employment contract.
Do we know if she's interested in that position as an employment at will position?
Ask her,
Did you?
ask her.
As I stated at Monday meeting with you and Bob, I am not.
Well, then I guess there's not much need to take action.
Well, I think there is. We need to affirm it, and then she can decide what to do. So, further discussion? Okay, then I'll sense you're ready to vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, the motion passes 3-2. Accounts payable, payment of the authorized payment of the bills. First motion would
So
be,
can I just ask a clarifying question on that previous agenda item? So the agenda item was to clarify action taken on 12/12. We discussed the action that was taken, which was a motion to extend a contract to an employee. The motion failed. So that clarifies the action that was taken. Based on this agenda item, I guess I would ask the town attorney, are we in a position to offer essentially an at-will employment contract to a person? I mean,
Yes.
that wasn't,
In my
that's not
opinion,
this
yes, I'll
agenda
cut, I'll
item.
cut to the quick, yes, and the reason for it is, the clarification is whether or not, albeit the contract, the motion failed, the intent of the service was to continue as the original minutes, when you go back and read the original appointment minutes to the position of administrator. So this is a clarification that albeit the motion failed, that she would have, not have a written contract for a specific, with an specific end date. The clarification is that the determination was whether the intent was to allow her to continue as the administrator at will without a contract to serve at the pleasure of the board. And that's the clarification that was put on. I approve this language for that purpose.
Okay,
So
that's all
I
I
am
wanted to know.
comfortable that
I mean, you've taught me well about agendas. If
No,
you
no,
say
I-
it's good, it's good.
I guess just further to be clear then, Kathy, I mean, you responded verbally, but then I think if you're not interested in that, I think you need to give such a written communication to the town board, so we know that you're not interested in that position, okay?
Or as we discussed, and I
It's
don't
gonna
want to
be
get
in
in
the
the middle of it,
minutes, so-
she can
Huh?
also come back with a
It's gonna be
counteroffer.
in the minutes.
Well, she said we shouldn't do, no, you need, you basically need to give us, yours at least courtesy of, if you're not interested in it, to give that to the town board in writing. That's just a reasonable expectation, okay?
You think so, I don't know that I do.
Well, I want to know where we're at, okay?
So Attorney Macy, in the past when we've had employment-related questions, specifically towards contracts, you've always deferred and had others from your staff address that. Are you
No, I have a labor lawyer, I don't even have a staff. I'm talking procedure.
Okay.
I'm not talking about the contract. I reviewed the minutes, and
Okay.
and I was here when the first action was taken. I'm only talking procedure. When we started the meeting the other day, all those present in the meeting will acknowledge that I said, if this is a labor problem, I'm the wrong guy.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So, this was all about clarifying, and that's a procedural question, a open meeting law question, as Supervisor Dorr has indicated. I feel I can answer those questions. But it comes down to the contract and whether the contract was enforced or not enforced. I don't touch that issue.
Okay.
And Kathy knows that, and the other people in the room knew that. But we did talk about at the meeting, and I want to just full disclosure, that she has every right to come back and say, okay, I now understand the position of the board, and I can or can't, you know, I'm willing to accept, but I might be able to accept it if blank. I don't want to say that there's just one possible going way forward, because I don't want to leave that confusion here either. And I don't think the chairman meant to leave that as a confusion, but we talked about that if that was the decision of the board, she can come back and say, I would be willing to do it, understanding what you decided if the following, again, I'm not putting words in her mouth, but the only thing isn't to say, I don't want to be your administrator. They could say, I understand, but, okay? We all understand that? She can do that, right? Kathy, you understand that? We talked about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I happen to agree with the chairman in this instance. I think continue or try to put closure to this, we should get a written response. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then, last item, accounts payable authorization of payment of the bills. The first one would be a motion to authorize payment of the Rockford Melky bill in the amount of $474.39. Is someone prepared to make that motion and second it?
I'll make a motion that we approve the Rupert Milky bill for $474.39.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, Supervisor Radke, Supervisor German, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chairman Fisher?
Abstain.
Bob?
Aye.
Supervisor Stigler?
Aye.
Supervisor Durr?
Aye.
Supervisor German?
Aye.
Supervisor Radke?
Aye.
Okay, and then finally, a motion would be in order to authorize the payment of the Raymond bills in the amount of $54,954.91, and I will so move. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Chairman Fisher, Supervisor Radke, any discussion on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Chairman Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Radke?
Aye.
Supervisor German?
Aye.
Supervisor Durr?
Aye.
Supervisor Stigler?
Okay, a motion to adjourn, please.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Supervisor Radke, is there a second? I'll
Second.
second. Supervisor German, second. Motion made and seconded to adjourn at 10:22 PM. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are officially adjourned. Thank you.